Emma Moretti had one final secret: she was dying. Stage 4 brain cancer. She had hidden it perfectly, shielding her husband, Jason Romano, from the inevitable pain of losing her. She thought, at the very least, he would grieve when she was gone. But on the day of her son Noah's birthday, she watched her world collapse. Jason, the man she had loved and sacrificed everything for, was on one knee proposing to her sister, Lily. Her family clapped. Her mother smiled. Her father, Edward Moretti, the ruthless mafia capo, told her to understand. After all, Lily deserved happiness. And Noah? Her own son? He beamed up at her and said, "I want Auntie Lily to be my mom too." That was the moment Emma stopped being the fool. Before death could take her, Ethan Sullivan, a man with his own dark past, offered her a way out. A way to fight back. With his help, she faked her death, vanishing from a world that had chapter 1. The morning of my son's 6th birthday, I woke up thinking it would be a perfect day. I had planned everything down to the last detail: a private VIP tour of Ocean Park, an exclusive lunch by the dolphin exhibit, and a custom-made cake waiting for Noah at the end of the day. As the wife of Jason Romano, the mafia boss of the Romano Empire, money had never been an issue. But love? Loyalty? That was another story. The hospital visits had drained more than just my energy. Stage 4 brain cancer was a slow, cruel thief, stealing my time, my future. But I had kept it a secret from Jason. He had made it clear he didn't have time for meaningless worries. "Don't waste my money on hospitals, Emma," he'd said, barely looking up from his phone. "You always overthink things." I wasn't overthinking. I was dying. But today wasn't about me. It was about my son. By noon, Ocean Park was filled with excited children, the scent of saltwater and fried food lingering in the air. Noah pulled me toward the giant shark tank, his small fingers warm in mine. "Mommy, look. It's so big." I laughed, pressing a kiss to his curly hair. "Bigger than you?" He nodded eagerly, his excitement making my exhaustion worth it. Then, out of nowhere, his voice lit up with even more excitement. "Mommy. Look. Daddy's here too." I frowned. "Jason?" That wasn't possible. He had told me he was handling business. That he was too busy to even call Noah for his birthday. I followed my son's gaze and the world beneath me crumbled. There, in the middle of the plaza, Jason was on one knee, holding a ring. For Lily. My younger sister. The one who had cried to me about her failed relationships. The one I had comforted after every heartbreak. The one who had sworn Jason was like a brother to her. She stood there with wide, teary eyes, hands covering her mouth. "Marry me," Jason said, his voice clear, steady. Like this was the most natural thing in the world. Lily let out a shaky sob, nodding furiously. "Yes." "Oh my God, Jason, yes." My entire family, my mother, father, aunts, uncles stood around them, clapping. Clapping. As if this was something to celebrate. As if I wasn't standing right here. The ring slid onto Lily's finger, and I felt something inside me snap. Noah tugged at my sleeve, confused but excited. "Mommy. Is Daddy giving Auntie Lily a present? Can I go too?" I couldn't breathe. Then, as if she had just noticed me, my mother's smile faltered. The applause faded. One by one, their gazes turned to me. Jason slowly rose to his feet, locking eyes with me. There was no guilt. No shame. Just the same mild irritation he always had when I inconvenienced him. Lily, on the other hand, had the audacity to look annoyed. Jason crossed his arms, exhaling like I was exhausting him. "Emma, let's not do this here." "Do what, Jason?" My voice shook with barely contained rage. "Make a scene," he cut in, rolling his eyes. "God, you're always so dramatic." The slap echoed through the plaza. For a moment, everything froze. The sting on my palm was nothing compared to the burning rage in my chest. Jason's head snapped to the side, his jaw tightening. When he turned back, there was no shame, no remorse, just irritation. "Really, Emma?" he scoffed, rubbing his cheek. "Was that necessary?" The sheer audacity left me breathless. The sting of betrayal wasn't just in Jason's eyes, it was in the shocked gasps of my family, the disapproving frown on my father's face. "Emma," my father, Edward Moretti, barked. "Don't ruin your sister's happiness." My stomach dropped. Edward Moretti, capo of the Moretti Syndicate, a man feared in all of New York, had just dismissed me like I was a nuisance. Happiness? I let out a hollow laugh, my vision blurring. Is this a joke? My hands trembled at my sides. You all knew? My mother, Isabella Moretti, smoothed out her designer dress. Emma, you and Jason have been distant for a while. We thought it was for the best. For the best? My voice cracked. For the best? You mean betraying me behind my back? Jason exhaled, exasperated. Emma, stop making a scene. A scene? My voice rose. You proposed to my sister in public, surrounded by my own family, on my son's birthday. And I'm making a scene? Lily had the audacity to step forward, pouting like she was the victim. Emma, I love him. She reached for my hand, fake sympathy in her eyes. I didn't plan this, but I jerked away like her touch was poison. Don't touch me. Her face twisted with irritation. God, Emma, why are you being so selfish? You never appreciated Jason. You were always running off to your little hospital visits, leaving him alone. What did you expect? My stomach lurched. You're blaming me for your affair? Lily shrugged, her lips curving into a smirk. You pushed him away. I was just there for him. You mean you threw yourself at him like a desperate slut? I snapped, shaking with fury. Her eyes darkened. Careful, Emma. Or what? My voice dropped to a whisper. You'll steal something else from me? Jason sighed, as if he was tired of my tantrum. Emma, let's be adults here. Adults? I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You mean like how you crept around behind my back? Lied to me? Destroyed our marriage? His expression didn't change. Not even a flicker of guilt. Lily, however, smirked. You and Jason were over long before this, Emma. She held up her hand, flashing the diamond ring. He chose me. The word sliced through me like a blade. And then my mother spoke, her voice filled with pride. Emma, this is for the best, she said smoothly. Lily is pregnant. With Jason's child. The words hit me like a wrecking ball. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. Proud. She sounded proud. What? My voice was barely a whisper. Lily placed a hand on her stomach, her smirk widening. That's right, sis. You're going to be an aunt. Isn't it wonderful? A cold chill ran down my spine. Jason's child. The man who ignored me when I was sick. The man who never once took me to a doctor. The man who hadn't even cared enough to ask why I was always exhausted. And my sister, carrying his child. My mother smiled, as if this was wonderful news. You should be happy for them. They'll finally have the family Jason always wanted. Noah, who had been quiet, tugged at my sleeve. His big, innocent eyes blinked up at me. I like Aunt Lily too, his voice filled with childlike hope. If Daddy loves her, you should be happy, Mom. Plus, I want Aunt Lily to be my mom too. I couldn't breathe. Chapter 2. The world blurred around me. Lily's victorious smirk. Jason's blank indifference. My parents' silent complicity. And my son, my baby, smiling up at me, completely unaware of the betrayal tearing me apart. Before I lost control, I turned on my heel, gripping Noah's small hand like a lifeline. Emma, Jason called, sounding bored. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I walked away, my legs trembling beneath me, my son's warm fingers clutching mine. I didn't stop. Not even when Noah kept looking back. Not even when I heard Lily's voice, dripping with false pity, she'll get over it. I wouldn't. I would never forgive them. The Romano estate was eerily silent when we got home. Noah fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted from his birthday, the one his father had chosen to celebrate with someone else. I tucked him in, brushing his curls from his forehead. His peaceful face made my chest ache. He didn't understand. He still believed his father was some kind of hero. I wished I could protect him from the truth. Once his breathing evened out, I left his room and collapsed onto my bed, sobbing until my body felt empty. Jason Romano. Mafia boss. My husband. The father of my child. And Lily? She was my baby sister. The one I never imagined would be the cause of mine. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the memories came anyway, uninvited, relentless, cruel. Jason had pursued me relentlessly, the way only a man used to getting what he wanted could. When the Moretti Empire sent me to Paris for business, Jason booked a last-minute flight just to be with me. "I couldn't live without you for a whole week," he had said, standing in the hotel lobby with a bouquet of tulips. I had called him crazy. He had just kissed me and said, "Crazy in love." That was Jason. Affectionate. Possessive. Mine. Then we got married. On our honeymoon, he whisked me away to Sydney, where we spent a month indulging in luxury, walking along the harbor, and making love under city lights. He had promised me forever. When Noah was born, he became even more protective, refusing to let me lift a finger. Every night, he held me close and whispered, "I love you more than anything in this world." I had believed him. Then Lily came back. She had been studying fashion design abroad for years, and when she returned, she was more beautiful than ever, elegant, stylish, the kind of woman people admired. Jason noticed. I saw it the way her eyes lingered on him, the way she laughed just a little too much at his jokes, the way Jason suddenly had so much to say to her. But I told myself it was nothing. Lily was my sister. Jason was my husband. Then one night, I walked into our master bedroom and saw them curled up in bed together. My heart stopped. "Jason?" My voice barely came out. Lily sat up immediately, pulling the blanket around her. Jason, on the other hand, didn't even look guilty. "Relax, Emma," he had said, rubbing his temples like I was the one being unreasonable. Lily fainted. I was just helping her. And I, like a fool, had let it slide. Because Noah was in the room. Because I didn't want to believe it. Because I was a goddamn idiot. But now? Now I knew the truth. They had been screwing behind my back for who knows how long. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. The worst part? I still loved him. Even after all this, my stupid heart still ached for him. I wanted to scream. To throw something. To hurt the way I was hurting. And as if the universe wasn't done tormenting me, my phone rang. Mom. I should have ignored it, but the pathetic, desperate part of me still wanted to believe she'd be on my side. I pressed answer. Hello. Her voice was calm, like she wasn't the mother of the woman whose life had just been shattered. "What now, you're still crying? Come on, Emma, stop being dramatic." I choked on my own breath. "What?" "Lily is younger than you," she continued. "She deserves happiness too." My grip tightened around the phone. "And what about me?" My voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't I deserve it?" A sigh. Then my father's voice, "Don't be selfish, Emma. Think about Noah. Jason is going to be Lily's husband now. It's best if you cooperate." Something inside me snapped. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a crack before falling to the floor. And then I buried my face in my pillow and screamed until my throat felt raw. This wasn't just Jason's betrayal. It was everyone's. My mother. My father. My sister. My husband. Every single person I had ever loved had thrown me away like I was nothing. But if they thought I would just accept this? If they thought I would just cooperate? They were dead wrong. Chapter 3. I woke up to an eerie silence. I hadn't noticed when exhaustion pulled me under, whether I had cried myself to sleep or simply passed out. My body ached. My head throbbed like I'd been hit by a truck. But none of that mattered. Because the moment I sat up, I realized Noah wasn't in his bed. My heart dropped. I bolted out of the room, calling his name. "Noah?" I ran down the hall, checking the bathroom, the living room, everywhere. "Noah." Silence. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed my mother. She picked up after the third ring, her voice calm, almost bored. "Oh, Emma. Finally awake?" I could barely breathe. "Where's Noah?" "With us, of course. We're celebrating his birthday." I nearly dropped the phone. "What? Without me?" "Well, you were asleep," she sighed. "Lily and Jason planned a little party for him. He's having so much fun." I clenched my jaw, my nails digging into my palm. "You took my son while I was sleeping? Without telling me?" She'd scared. You were exhausted. We didn't want to wake you. My pulse pounded in my ears. Give him the phone. Now. A pause. Then a dismissive chuckle. Emma, don't ruin this for him. Let him be happy for once. Happy? My voice cracked. He's my son. Then stop making his life miserable just because your husband chose your sister. I nearly blacked out from rage. Excuse me? Emma, she said slowly, like I was a child. Lily will love Noah more than you ever could. You're always so busy with work, with your endless hospital visits. Maybe this is for the best. I gripped the phone so tightly I thought it would shatter. I swear to God, if you don't bring my son back enough, Emma. My mother's voice turned cold. Stop being selfish. Click. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my body shaking with rage, with helplessness. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to hurt the way I was hurting. Instead, my fingers moved on their own. I opened Instagram. And then my breath caught in my throat. The first post on my feed was Lily's. A photo of her and Jason, hands intertwined, her engagement ring front and center. Fate brought us together. Love kept us strong. Can't wait to be Mrs. Romano. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. OMG. Congratulations. Didn't see this coming, but you two look perfect together. I always thought Jason married the wrong sister, TBH. Crazy how life works. Weren't we just at his wedding a few years ago? People I knew. People who had attended my wedding were congratulating them like this was some kind of fairy tale. I wanted to smash my phone. But then another photo. My vision blurred. It was Noah. Sitting on Jason's lap, laughing, arms wrapped around Lily's neck. They looked like a happy, perfect family. Like I never existed. A sharp, stabbing pain tore through my skull. My vision spun, the pounding inside my head unbearable. With shaking hands, I reached for the nightstand, fumbling for the bottle of pain relievers. My fingers barely managed to twist the cap off before I popped 2 pills into my mouth, swallowing dry. But the pain didn't stop. A metallic taste filled my throat. My lip trembled as something warm trickled down my upper lip. I wiped at it absent-mindedly. Red. Blood. Panic gripped my chest. My breaths came out shallow, uneven. I grabbed my phone and dialed my mother's number. No answer. I tried my father. Nothing. My heart pounded as I scrolled down and pressed Jason's contact. The call rang. Once. Twice. Then straight to voicemail. I let out a weak, bitter laugh. Of course. Tears blurred my vision as I desperately pressed 911. Hello? My voice shook. 911, what's your emergency? I dashed, my body swayed. My fingers trembled as I tried to steady myself against the wall. I need help. Please. I dashed, the phone slipped from my grasp. The last thing I heard before darkness swallowed me whole was the faint voice of the operator, calling my name. Bright lights. The steady beeping of a monitor. The sharp scent of antiseptic. I woke up in a hospital bed. Alone. A nurse walked in, startled to see me awake. Ms. Romano, you're conscious. How are you feeling? My throat was dry. How long was I out? You were admitted last night, she said gently. The paramedics found you unconscious at home. Do you have any family we should contact? Family. The word twisted like a knife inside me. I let out a weak, hollow laugh. No. There's no one. The nurse gave me a sad look but said nothing. The next morning, after I was discharged, I went home. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. He's here. And then I saw him. Jason. Sitting on the couch like he still owned the place. Legs crossed, fingers tapping impatiently against the armrest. My chest tightened. What are you doing here? He stood up, pulling a stack of papers from his briefcase. A pen clipped to the top. He held it out to me. Sign it. I blinked. My fingers twitched. What? His eyes were empty, void of anything remotely resembling guilt. The divorce papers. Sign them now. Chapter 4. I stared at the divorce papers in Jason's hand, my whole body trembling. Sign it, he repeated, his tone void of emotion, as if the past years we spent together meant nothing. I took the papers, then tore them apart. Jason's eyes darkened slightly, but instead of anger, he smirked. With calculated ease, he pulled out an ATM card and tossed it onto the coffee table. "There's $1 million on that," he said. "Your severance pay." My breath hitched. Severance pay? Like I was just some employee who had outlived her usefulness? Like I had been nothing more than a burden he finally got rid of? Fury boiled inside me. I slapped him. Hard. The sharp crack of my palm against his cheek echoed through the room. Jason barely flinched. He slowly turned his head back, touching his cheek with mild amusement. "Feel better now?" he murmured. I picked up the ATM card and flung it back at him. "Go to hell, Jason." His smirk deepened. "Already there, sweetheart." Then he leaned closer, his breath cold against my skin. "You know," he said, his voice smooth but taunting, "Noah has already chosen Lily as his new mother." My blood ran cold. The kitchen door creaked open, and Lily stepped out, holding Noah's tiny hand. They were both smiling. My stomach twisted as I took in the sight before me. Noah, my baby, was cradling a giant robot toy in his arms, one I knew cost more than what I could ever afford. His eyes sparkled as he looked up at Lily, pure admiration shining in them. "Thank you, Mommy Lily," he beamed. "Mommy. Lily?" My throat tightened. "Noah baby. I whispered, my voice barely audible. He turned to me, but there was no excitement in his eyes when he saw me. Just mild curiosity. "Mommy, why are you mad?" he asked innocently. "Mom, Lily bought me this. She's the best." Lily laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, Noah, sweetie, I just want you to be happy." Lily, then look at me, "Emma, don't look so hurt. Noah's just being honest. I'm the one who's been taking care of him lately, after all." Noah nodded eagerly. "Mommy Lily is nice to me, Mommy. She plays with me, she makes Daddy happy. You should sign the papers so we can be a happy family." I felt the air leave my lungs. Then before I could react, she turned to Jason. And kissed him. Right in front of me. A deep, slow kiss, as if they had all the time in the world. Noah giggled. "Mommy Lily and Daddy love each other." Something inside me snapped. But I couldn't move. I just stood there. Frozen. Like a fool. Like an idiot. Watching my husband, my first love, kiss my sister while my son cheered them on. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But it was. It was all real. Jason pulled away from Lily with a satisfied smirk. Then he turned to me, his eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "Now, be a good girl and sign the papers, Emma," he said, his tone mocking, and gave me another copy. Noah, still holding his toy, turned to me with pleading eyes. "Yeah, Mommy. Sign it. Sign it now, please." Happy? They already looked happy. Like a perfect family. Double betrayal. A knife straight through my heart. I stumbled backward, my vision swimming with unshed tears. I need to be alone," I choked out. Without waiting for a response, I turned and rushed to my room, slamming the door behind me. And then I broke. I collapsed onto the floor, my body racked with silent, gut-wrenching sobs. I had lost everything. My husband. My son. My family. Why? Why wasn't I enough? Why was I the one suffering while they got to be happy? I curled into myself, the pain in my head throbbing violently, mixing with the unbearable ache in my heart. I didn't know how long I lay there, drowning in despair, before I fumbled for my phone. There was only one person left I could call. With shaking hands, I dialed. The line rang twice before a familiar, steady voice answered. "Emma?" A choked sob escaped me. "Ethan, please help me." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Emma, what happened?" His voice was tight with concern. "Jason. Noah," they dashed. My throat tightened. "They don't need me anymore. I have nothing left, Ethan. Nothing." "Emma, listen to me," Ethan said firmly. "You have me. And I'm not going to let you go through this alone. Tears spilled down my face. Come to me, he urged. I'll help you disappear. I'll get you out of there. A pause. Then his voice softened. And, there's something else. I didn't want to tell you over the phone, but you need to know. I wiped my tears, trying to focus. What is it? Our hospital is running a clinical trial, Ethan said. A new experimental treatment for brain cancer. It's risky, but it's your best chance. I froze. You knew? I whispered. I had a suspicion, he admitted. I saw your medical records, Emma. I know you've been trying to fight this alone. My chest ached. Come to me, Ethan pleaded. Let me help you, Emma. Not just with the trial but with everything. Let me take you away from all of this. I clutched the phone tightly, my heart pounding. This was it. My chance to leave. To escape this nightmare. To fight for myself. I took a deep breath, my decision made. I'm coming, Ethan. Chapter 5. The house was silent. Too silent. Jason, Lily, and Noah were gone. They had packed up and moved into their newly bought mansion, a home filled with luxury, laughter, and a future that didn't include me. They had left me behind without a second thought. It should have broken me. Maybe a part of me had broken. But as I sat in the empty living room, staring at the divorce papers I had rewritten myself, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to fight for a marriage that was already dead. I wasn't going to beg for a son who had already chosen another mother. I wasn't going to cry for a family that had never truly loved me. No. I was going to disappear. And one day I would return as someone they would all fear. With Ethan's help, I moved in silence. I made sure the new divorce papers were finalized, taking nothing from Jason. Not a single cent. I wouldn't owe him a damn thing. Then, I did something even more drastic. I reached out to an underground contact. Ethan's colleagues had helped me find someone who could provide me with what I needed. An unclaimed corpse. It had belonged to a woman of similar build and age, another forgotten soul discarded by the world. I dressed the body in one of my favorite dresses. Then, with shaking hands, I placed my wedding ring on its finger. And finally I unclasped the delicate gold necklace Jason had given me when he still loved me. The one I had cherished even after everything. The one Noah used to tug on as a baby while giggling, his small fingers tracing the pendant. Mommy, I like this. Is this magic? No, sweetheart, I had laughed. But Daddy gave it to me, so it's special. Then it's magic. Noah had grinned, curling up in my lap. A lump formed in my throat. That was years ago. Now, Noah clung to Lily instead. I draped the necklace around the corpse's neck, swallowing the pain. It was done. The woman on the bed was no longer a stranger. She was Emma Romano. That night, before I set the house ablaze, I picked up my phone with trembling fingers, hesitating only for a second before dialing Jason's number. Ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. Of course. I already knew why. My mother had told me everything when she called me earlier. Oh, Emma. I didn't know how to tell you, but Jason, Lily, and Noah, they left for Paris this morning. Paris. A honeymoon for Jason and Lily. A family vacation for my son without me. A sharp, hollow ache spread through my chest, but I crushed it down. I called again. And again. Still, no answer. Finally, I opened my messages and began to type. To Jason Romano, thank you for teaching me the most painful lesson of my life. Thank you for showing me how little I meant to you. Thank you for making it so easy to let go. Congratulations on your new family. I hope Lily makes you happier than I ever could. I hesitated, then added one final line. Goodbye, Jason. Then, with a steady breath, I pressed send. That was the last message he would ever receive from me. I made sure the flames consumed everything. The memories. The pain. The Emma Romano that had been discarded like trash. As the fire spread, I stood outside in the shadows, watching the flames engulf the place I had once called home. The laughter that once filled these walls was gone. Noah used to run through those hallways, calling my name in excitement. Mommy. Mommy, look at me. He used to crawl into my lap, his small arms wrapping around my neck as he whispered, I love you, Mommy. But now he was in Lily's arms. Now he called her mommy. Now he loved her more. A sharp, hollow ache spread through my chest, but I crushed it down. Emotions had no place in my new life. By the time the fire department arrived, it was too late. The body inside was burned beyond recognition. And just like that I was dead. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Plus Jason's POV. The private jet touched down smoothly, and I rolled my shoulders, cracking my neck as I stepped off. The trip had been good. No bullshit. No drama. Just business and pleasure. Lily was glowing, still high off our honeymoon. Paris had suited her, designer clothes, fancy dinners, the whole fucking dream she'd always wanted. She clung to my arm like the perfect little trophy wife, soaking up every second. Noah had been happy too. Kid didn't hesitate to call her mommy. Didn't even fucking look back. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Emma was gone. Not dead, of course, just out of my life. The past. A fucking ghost. She'd served her purpose, and now she was just another chapter one had no reason to reopen. As my car pulled up to the estate, I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temples. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Business could wait. It buzzed again. And again. I sighed, pulling it out, ready to snap at whoever the fuck was blowing up my line. Dozens of missed calls. A shit ton of unread messages. I frowned, scrolling. Most were from unknown numbers. Some from business associates. But one message caught my eye. Emma Romano. My grip tightened around the phone as I opened it. Thank you for teaching me the most painful lesson of my life. Thank you for showing me how little I meant to you. Thank you for making it so easy to let go. Congratulations on your new family. I hope Lily makes you happier than I ever could. Goodbye, Jason. A strange fucking feeling settled in my gut, something sharp and off. But before I could process it, Lily grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. The news anchor's voice filled the room. Emma Romano, former wife of CEO Jason Romano, found dead in fire. Chapter 6. Breaking news. Tragic house fire claims the life of Jason Romano's ex-wife. Authorities confirmed that the remains found in the Romano estate belonged to Emma Romano, former wife of CEO Jason Romano. Officials suspect the fire was an accident, but investigations are ongoing. My whole fucking body locked up. The room went silent. Static. Dead? Emma was fucking dead? No. That wasn't possible. That wasn't. My jaw clenched as I reread her message, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. Goodbye, Jason. The words burned. A cold, sick feeling crawled up my spine. I gritted my teeth, my fingers tightening around my phone until my knuckles went white. Something was wrong. Something was very fucking wrong. Fucking hell. I hated this. I hated the way my chest felt tight. I hated the way my stomach churned with something dangerously close to regret. But most of all, I hated the goddamn feeling that I had finally, truly, fucked up. I stared at the television, my jaw tightening as the news anchor's voice droned on. The words barely registered. They bounced off me like distant echoes, muffled, unreal. This was some kind of sick joke. Some kind of misunderstanding. But then I saw the footage. The house, nothing more than blackened ruins, smoke still rising from the charred remains. The place where Emma used to wait for me. The place where I had once held her in my arms. The place I had abandoned without a second thought. Gone. Something ugly twisted in my chest, but I shoved it down. She did this to herself. Fuck, I muttered under my breath, running a hand down my face. Lily, curled up on the couch beside me, let out a fake little sniffle. She had been clutching Noah in her arms, playing the part of the grieving sister perfectly. This is just, so tragic, she murmured, stroking Noah's hair. I never thought Emma would just dash. She let out a dramatic sigh. She gave up, Jason. I didn't answer. My throat was dry. Noah, confused but trusting, clung to Lily. His small hands gripped her dress as he looked up, searching her face for reassurance. Mommy left me? Lily nodded, her voice gentle yet laced with poison. She was weak, sweetheart. She couldn't handle losing us, so she gave up. A sharp, violent stab shot through my ribs. Weak? Emma had been a lot of things, but she had never been fucking weak. She had loved Noah with everything she had. She had loved me, even when I didn't deserve it. And now she was just gone? Emma had fought for me. For our family. She had endured every fucking thing I threw at her. And then what? She just gave up? Just like that? No. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening on the glass until my knuckles went white. This wasn't how Emma went down. The woman I knew, the woman I had spent years breaking apart, would never have let herself be erased so easily. So why the hell did I feel like I had just lost something I could never fucking replace? Lily shifted beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. Jason, don't blame yourself, okay? Blame myself? I nearly laughed. I didn't need to blame myself because deep down, I already fucking knew. I had done this. I had pushed her too far. I had destroyed her so completely that she had vanished, leaving behind only ashes. The whiskey glass in my hand trembled, the liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Fuck, I muttered again, standing abruptly. I couldn't fucking breathe. Lily blinked up at me. Jason? Where are you going? I didn't answer. I just grabbed my coat, snatched my keys off the table, and stormed out of the house. The night air was cold, but it did nothing to cool the fire burning in my chest. I climbed into my car and drove without thinking, gripping the wheel so tight my fingers ached. I ended up in front of the charred ruins of the house before I even realized where I was going. The police tape flapped in the wind, the scent of smoke and death still lingering in the air. I stepped out of the car, my jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. This was where Emma had died. This was where I had fucking lost her. For the first time since the news broke, the weight of it all settled onto my shoulders. Emma. Gone. She wasn't coming back. The morning sun cast a dull glow over my office, but I barely noticed. My head fucking pounded from the hangover I had earned last night, and my mood was already shitty. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples, when a thick envelope landed on my desk with a quiet thud. Boss, this just arrived. No sender. I barely glanced up as my assistant placed it in front of me, his voice hesitant. No sender? I muttered, eyeing the envelope with suspicion. I had a long list of enemies, but none were stupid enough to send me a fucking bomb. Do you want me to open it first? He asked. I waved him off. Get out. Once the door shut behind him, I grabbed the envelope, tore it open, and pulled out the stack of documents inside. The first page hit me like a freight train. Confidential medical report, patient name, Emma Romano, diagnosis, stage 4 glioblastoma, brain cancer. I froze. The words blurred, my grip tightening around the paper. What the fuck is this? I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the contents with growing horror. It detailed everything: her hospital visits, the decline in her health, the fucking death sentence she had been carrying all by herself, and the resent admissions weeks ago. Her collapse before? It wasn't just from emotional stress. It was her body fucking shutting down. She was dying. And she never told me. My stomach twisted, a sick, nauseating feeling crawling up my spine. I thought back Emma's distant stares, the time she looked exhausted, the way she seemed weaker toward the end. I had dismissed it as her just being dramatic, being pathetic. I had ignored it. I had ignored her. A sharp pain shot through my chest, something foreign and fucking unbearable. My hands clenched into fists around the papers. She was sick. She was fucking dying. And I had abandoned her. I had thrown her away like she meant nothing. I had laughed in her face while she was secretly fighting for her goddamn life. My breath came out harsh, ragged. The office felt too small, too suffocating. I shoved back my chair, standing so abruptly it scraped against the floor. Fuck. The roar ripped from my throat before I could stop it. The whiskey glass from last night still sat on my desk, and before I could think, I grabbed it and hurled it across the room. Smash. Shards exploded against the wall, raining onto the floor like fucking justice, sharp, unforgiving, and too goddamn late. I should have fucking known. I should have seen it. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing a hand against my forehead as the weight of it all crashed down on me. Emma hadn't left Noah. She hadn't given up. She had been fucking dying. And I had fucking helped kill her. I didn't know what this feeling was, this deep, gut-wrenching agony clawing at my insides. But it was fucking relentless, like something inside me had finally shattered. For the first time in my goddamn life, I sank into my chair, gripping the file so tightly my knuckles turned white. And for the first time Jason Romano, the ruthless bastard, the man who never fucking cared, broke down. Chapter 7. Emma's POV. While the world mourned my death, I arrived at the airport quietly at this hour, dimly lit, private, and completely off the grid. I clutched the fake passport in my trembling hands, my fingers pressing into the smooth, forged leather. The name on it wasn't mine. Serafina Velasquez. I swallowed hard, staring at the name like it belonged to a stranger. Because it did. Emma Romano was dead. The woman Jason had destroyed. The wife he had tossed aside like fucking trash. The mother Noah had forgotten. I exhaled slowly, forcing my heartbeat to settle. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I made my way toward the jet. It was smaller than I expected, sleek and expensive, the kind of luxury I once thought belonged to people like Jason. Now, it belonged to me. New life. New name. No looking back. I climbed the stairs, feeling the wind whip against my face, carrying away the last remnants of the weak woman I used to be. Ethan was already inside, leaning against the leather seat with that unreadable look in his sharp eyes. He had been watching me from the moment I entered the airport, probably wondering if I was going to crack. Not a fucking chance. You got on, he said, voice calm. Did you think I wouldn't? I slid into the seat across from him, my body heavy with exhaustion. He shrugged. Wouldn't blame you if you hesitated. You're leaving everything behind. Everything? Ethan, I have nothing left. A shadow crossed his face. You have yourself. I scoffed. What's left of me, anyway? The flight attendant came by, offering champagne. I waved her off, suddenly feeling too sick to drink. The engines roared to life. I leaned back, closing my eyes as the plane began to move, the force pushing me deeper into my seat. My stomach flipped as the wheels left the ground, and then just like that I was airborne. Leaving behind the ashes of my old life. I turned my head, watching the city shrink beneath me, the lights fading, disappearing. The house. The memories. Jason. Noah. A lump rose in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I had cried enough. Screamed enough. Bled enough. Now, it was time to survive. Ethan was watching me again, silent but calculating. He never pushed, never asked for more than I was willing to give. Maybe that was why I trusted him. Where are we going? I asked, needing something to focus on. Italy, he said. I've arranged for you to stay in a secured underground medical facility. You'll get the best treatment there. No one will know who you are. I nodded slowly, processing his words. And after? After, we rebuild you. I let out a humorless laugh. I didn't know I needed rebuilding. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Emma Romano is dead. But Serafina Velasquez? She's whatever the fuck you want her to be. I stared at him. The weight of those words settled deep in my bones. He was right. I wasn't just running. I was erasing the weak, pitiful woman who let Jason and Lily rip her apart. Emma Romano had begged. Emma Romano had suffered. Serafina Velasquez? She was going to be the kind of woman Jason fucking regretted losing. The jet touched down just before sunrise, the sky a deep shade of indigo. A sleek black car waited for us on the tarmac. No security, no flashing lights. Just quiet efficiency. Ethan led me inside, and the driver pulled away without a word. The city blurred past us, the streets of Italy unfamiliar yet strangely welcoming. I was no longer in Jason's world. No longer in a place where my name meant nothing. How are you feeling? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Like a woman who just buried herself alive, I said dryly. He sighed. Emma, don't, I cut him off. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Don't tell me I'll heal. Don't feed me that bullshit, Ethan. His jaw tightened, but he didn't push. Good. I wasn't in the mood for comfort. I wanted the rage. The fury. The pain. I needed it. The drive took us out of the city, winding through narrow roads until we reached a secluded estate. High walls. Security cameras. A place designed to keep secrets buried. We passed through the gates without stopping. Inside, the facility was pristine white halls, soft beeping machines, a scent of sterile cleanliness that made my stomach twist. A woman in a lab coat approached, her sharp gaze assessing me instantly. "You must be Emma," she said. "Not anymore," I corrected. Her lips curled into something resembling a smirk. "Good. Then let's get started." I sat in front of a mirror, staring at the stranger looking back at me. Her hair was darker now, almost black, cascading in waves over her shoulders. Her skin, once pale from stress and sickness, had regained a glow of life. But her eyes. They were the same. Haunted. Burning. "Who are you?" Ethan asked from behind me. I met his gaze through the mirror. "Serafina Velasquez," I said. The name felt foreign on my tongue, but it would become mine. Serafina. Like the seraphim angels born from fire. Velasquez. A name not tainted by betrayal. Ethan's expression remained unreadable. "Are you ready for this?" I smirked, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. "Ready?" I repeated, standing up. I turned to face him fully, my new identity settling over me like a second skin. I was made for this. Chapter 8. The examination room smelled like antiseptic and cold metal, the bright fluorescent lights making everything feel too clinical. I sat stiffly on the cushioned table, my fingers curled into the fabric of my hospital gown. Ethan stood beside another doctor, flipping through my medical file. His brows were furrowed in concentration, but his expression was unreadable. "Your condition is serious," the other Dr. Chris, I think his name was, said, adjusting his glasses. "Late-stage brain cancer isn't something we can just ignore." "No shit." I stayed quiet, my throat tightening. I already knew I was dying. What I didn't know was how much time I had left. Ethan glanced at me, his hazel eyes softer than usual. "There's a new treatment." I blinked. "A what?" Dr. Chris nodded. "It's still experimental, but we've had successful results in other patients." "Experimental?" I swallowed hard. "Meaning what? I'd be a lab rat?" "Meaning you have a chance," Ethan corrected, closing the file. "A real one." A chance. My heart thumped. I had already accepted my fate. I had made peace with the idea that I wouldn't live long enough to see my revenge through. But now, I wasn't sure what to do with it. "I don't know," I whispered, staring down at my lap. "What if it doesn't work?" Ethan stepped closer, his voice firm. "And what if it does?" I inhaled shakily. The idea of really living felt foreign to me now. I wasn't scared of death anymore. But I was scared of hoping for something and having it ripped away again. Still, I wasn't stupid. If there was even a sliver of a chance, I had to take it. "Okay," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it." Ethan exhaled, relief flashing in his eyes. "Good." Dr. Chris gave a small smile. "We'll start immediately." The first few days of treatment were rough. The headaches came in waves, sharp, relentless. Some nights, I couldn't sleep. My body ached, my stomach twisted, and nausea clung to me like a second skin. Ethan was always there. Sometimes he sat in the corner of my room, silently watching. Sometimes he hovered by my bedside, forcing me to drink water even when I didn't want to. "You're acting like a mother hen," I grumbled one night, rolling onto my side. Ethan smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "And you're acting like a brat." I shot him a weak glare. "Screw you." "Maybe later," he mused, amused. I groaned, throwing a pillow at him. He caught it effortlessly, shaking his head. "You're going to be fine, Serafina," he said after a beat, his voice quieter. I closed my eyes. I wanted to believe him. One night, I woke up to a strange noise. My head was still groggy from the medication, but I could feel something was off. The hallway outside my room wasn't as empty as it usually was. There were voices. Low. Gruff. Curious, I slid out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cool floor. The door was cracked open just enough for me to peek through. And what I saw made my breath catch. At the end of the hallway, several men stood in a perfect line, their heads bowed. Heavily armed men. And in front of them? Ethan. He wasn't in his usual doctor's coat. Instead, he was dressed in all black, his posture radiating authority. One of the men murmured, bowing lower. We have secured the shipments. Everything is in place, LL. The king? My stomach twisted as realization slammed into me. Ethan wasn't just some doctor with connections. He was something else entirely. I pressed a hand over my mouth, heart hammering. Who the hell had I trusted my life with? I must have made a noise, because suddenly Ethan's head snapped in my direction. Shit. Serafina, he said, his voice sharp. The armed men turned, their gazes locking onto me. Panic surged up my throat. Ethan strode toward me, his eyes unreadable. Before I could back away, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me into my room, shutting the door behind him. What the hell was that? I demanded, yanking my arm free. Who are you? He exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. Ethan? I pushed. What are you not telling me? His gaze met mine. And for the first time since I had known him, I saw something dangerous lurking beneath his usual calm. I told you I could keep you safe, he said slowly. I didn't say how. I swallowed. You're not just a doctor, are you? My medical profession is a front, he admitted, his voice calm, almost too calm. I'm not just a doctor, Piccola. I stared at him, my pulse hammering. Then what are you? He held my gaze, his next words making my stomach drop. I am the king of the mafia. My breath hitched. Ethan watched me, waiting for my reaction. But I didn't scream. I didn't run. Because suddenly, things made sense. The way he always had the power to make things happen. The way people listened to him without question. The way danger clung to him, just beneath the surface. I had thought I had lost everything. But now, standing before a man who had just revealed himself as the king of the underworld, I realized I had gained something far more dangerous. And maybe just maybe far more powerful. Chapter 9. 2 years. 730 days. That's how long it took for me to go from a dying woman to a survivor. 2 years of hell. Of gritted teeth and endless pain. Of waking up every day, unsure if I'd make it to the next. But I did. And now? Serafina Velasquez was born. The final test results were in. Ethan held the papers in his hand, scanning through them with an unreadable expression. His tattoos peeked out from under the sleeves of his white coat, a stark contrast to the sterile medical setting. I stared at him, my stomach twisting. Well? He didn't speak right away. Instead, he exhaled slowly before looking up at me. You're cancer-free. I blinked. The words didn't register at first. They felt foreign. Distant. What? A small smirk tugged at his lips. You heard me, Serafina. My breath caught. Cancer-free. I was supposed to cry, wasn't I? I was supposed to collapse, overwhelmed with relief. But I just stood there, gripping the edge of the exam table, my nails digging into the cushioned surface. Because this wasn't just about survival. This was about revenge. Ethan studied me carefully. You don't look happy. I am, I murmured, my voice hoarse. I swallowed. I don't know how to feel. You feel like you were ready to die, Ethan said, crossing his arms, and now you don't know what to do with your life. I nodded. He wasn't wrong. Ethan stepped closer, his golden brown eyes locking onto mine. Then let me give you an option. I frowned. What kind of option? The kind where you don't just live, you take back what's yours, he said smoothly. Power, Serafina. The ability to fight back. To destroy the people who destroyed you. My heart pounded. Power? Me? I had spent my entire life being weak. Being the woman who gave everything and received nothing. But now, Ethan was offering me something different. A chance to become something different. You want to train me? I asked hesitantly. Ethan's lips curved. Not just train you. Transform you. I exhaled sharply. Jason. Lily. Noah. My parrots, they thought I was dead. They thought they had won. But I wasn't just going to return. I was going to rise. I lifted my chin. I want in. Ethan chuckled. Good girl. Training was hell. I had thought surviving cancer was painful. But Ethan didn't hold back. For months, I was thrown into combat training. Kicked to the ground more times than I could count. Forced to hold my own against men twice my size. My body ached. My muscles burned. But I never gave up. And Ethan? He was relentless. Again, he ordered, standing over me as I panted on the floor. I groaned, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I just got thrown into a wall, Ethan. And next time, you'll throw them into a wall, he said smoothly. I gritted my teeth, pushing myself up. Pain didn't matter. Weakness wasn't an option. I lunged at him, and this time I landed the punch. Ethan grinned. Better. I smirked. It wasn't just physical training. Ethan made sure I learned everything. Business strategies. Psychological warfare. The art of manipulation. I studied late into the nights, memorizing every lesson he threw my way. One night, after hours of drilling business tactics into my head, Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching me. You learn fast, he mused. I smirked. I have to. He tilted his head. Tell me, Serafina. What will you do when you see them again? I went still. Jason. Lily. My parents. The people who left me to die. I curled my fingers into fists. I won't forgive them. Ethan nodded approvingly. Good. But Ethan wasn't just a mafia king. He was still a doctor. A damn good one. And one day, he took me to see something that would change my life forever. A children's cancer ward. I hesitated at the entrance, watching as tiny, bald-headed kids sat in hospital beds, hooked up to IVs. Some were smiling. Others looked tired, frail. Ethan walked in like he belonged there. Because he did. Dr. Ethan. A little girl beamed, waving. Ethan grinned, kneeling beside her bed. Hey, kiddo. How are we feeling today? She giggled. Better. I watched, stunned. This ruthless mafia king, the man who had trained me to break bones and crush enemies, was kneeling beside a 6-year-old girl, listening to her talk about her favorite cartoons. And he cared. Truly, deeply cared. One of the nurses smiled at me. Dr. Ethan is their favorite. He pays for most of their treatments. I blinked. He what? The nurse chuckled. He doesn't talk about it, but yeah. He saves lives in more ways than one. I turned to look at him again. The tattoos on his arms peeked from beneath his rolled-up sleeves as he carefully adjusted an 4 drip for one of the kids. For the first time since I met Ethan, I saw him completely. He wasn't just a killer. He was a protector. And I wasn't sure what to do with that realization. That night, Ethan found me on the rooftop of the hospital, staring at the city lights. You've been quiet, he noted. I crossed my arms. I didn't know you did all this. His lips twitched. What, you thought I was just a heartless bastard? I hesitated. Kind of. He laughed, low and rough. I am a heartless bastard. Just not to them. I exhaled. You're a good man, Ethan, I murmured. He scoffed. I'm a dangerous man, Serafina. There's a difference. I turned to look at him. Tattoos. Scars. Darkness in his eyes. But I had seen him with those kids. I had seen the truth. Maybe, I admitted. But I don't think you're as heartless as you pretend to be. Ethan smirked but didn't deny it. Months passed. I became stronger. Faster. Smarter. And one day, I stood in front of a mirror, staring at the woman I had become. Gone was the fragile, heartbroken wife. In her place stood Serafina Velasquez. A woman with one goal. To take back what was hers. To take her son back. And this time I wouldn't break. Chapter 10. The airport was crowded, filled with the usual noise of rolling suitcases, distant announcements, and rushed conversations. I sat calmly in one of the lounge chairs near the boarding gates, my fingers wrapped around a coffee cup. I wasn't nervous. I should have been. 2 years ago, the thought of being in the same room as Jason Romano would have sent my heart racing. But now? I felt nothing. Or at least, that's what I told myself. He had no idea what was coming. Jason was already here, waiting for his flight. His men were hovering nearby, sharp-eyed and alert. They weren't watching for me, though. They should have been. I adjusted my sunglasses, letting my gaze sweep over him. Jason hadn't changed much. The same sharp jawline, the same broad shoulders, the same cold, unreadable expression. Except now. He was about to be in my hands. My lips curled slightly as I watched his men return with a bottle of water. Right on time. The seal was intact. The brand was familiar. No one would ever suspect that the water he was about to drink had been carefully tampered with. A rare poison. Undetectable. Deadly within minutes. Of course, I wasn't going to let him die. Not yet. Jason unscrewed the cap, tilting the bottle back as he drank. 1 sip. 2. Then 3. I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. It started subtly. A slight shift in his posture. The way his fingers flexed against the armrest. The slow blink of his eyes, as if the world had suddenly become too bright. And then his breathing changed. Shallow. Unsteady. His free hand moved to his chest. I watched, calm and patient. He tensed, gripping the chair's armrests as his body betrayed him. His jaw clenched. His pulse quickened. Then his breath hitched sharp and strangled. His men noticed something was wrong. One of them stepped forward, brows furrowed. "Boss?" Jason didn't respond. Instead, he swayed. His face paled. His fingers clutched at his chest, his body reacting to the poison spreading through his bloodstream. My cue. I stood, moving smoothly through the crowd. People had started to notice. A businessman glanced over, eyes widening. A woman gasped as Jason staggered, nearly collapsing onto the floor. "Wait, isn't that Jason Romano?" someone whispered. "Oh my God, he's having a heart attack," another voice gasped. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. "He looks bad, someone help him." Then, I was there. A stranger in the crowd. A concerned passenger. "Sir? Are you okay?" My voice was soft, urgent. Jason barely registered me. His knees buckled, his vision blurring. His men rushed forward. "He's having a heart attack." "Boss," someone echoed in panic. No, he wasn't. He was dying. And I was the only one who could save him. I knelt beside him, my fingers already reaching into my bag. The antidote was ready, a small, nearly invisible injection hidden in my palm. Jason's hand shot out, gripping my arm in desperation. His pupils were blown wide, his body trembling. For a split second, his gaze locked onto mine. And something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Confusion. Fear. My heart should have clenched. But it didn't. I pressed the antidote into his skin. A quick, painless injection. His body jerked slightly, reacting to the dose. His grip on my arm tightened, then slowly loosened. His men were barking orders, calling for medics. I leaned in slightly, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're going to be fine." Jason's eyes were still on me, hazy and unfocused. His breathing evened out, ragged, but no longer labored. He was stabilizing. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Did that woman just save him? She knew exactly what to do. Who is she? And then, finally, the medics arrived. I pulled back, watching as they took over, lifting Jason onto a stretcher. His men moved aside, but Jason's gaze never left me. He was still staring. Like he was seeing something impossible. And then, just as they were about to wheel him away, I removed my sunglasses. Jason's entire body went still. His breath caught in his throat. His hands curled into fists. "Emma," he rasped. I tilted my head slightly, giving him a small, almost amused smile. "I think you're mistaken, sir," I said smoothly. But his face told me everything. He didn't believe me. He was shaken. For the first time, Jason Romano looked like a man who had seen a ghost. And as they wheeled him away, his hoarse voice carried through the air, "I owe you my life." A slow smile curled on my lips. "Yes, Jason. You do. And you have no idea just how much I plan to make you pay." Who are you?" Serafina Velasquez, Jason Romano was watching me. I could feel it. Even in a room full of people, his eyes tracked my every move. It had been 2 weeks since the airport incident. 2 weeks since I saved his life. 2 weeks since I let him see my face just enough to haunt him, just enough to make him wonder if his dead wife had returned from the grave. And now, he was obsessed. I played my role well. A mysterious businesswoman. A powerful investor. A woman with a face that kept him up at night. And today, I was making my next move. The Romano Empire was hosting an exclusive investors' dinner, a gathering of elites and stakeholders. It was the perfect setting to slip into Jason's world, to start tearing it apart from the inside. Dressed in a sleek black gown, I walked through the grand ballroom, a glass of champagne in hand. Ethan had arranged everything: funding, documents, connections. I wasn't just here to play. I was here to own Jason's company. His empire. His world. And he had no idea. Serafina Velasquez, a voice purred beside me. I turned slowly, coming face to face with the man himself. Jason. Dressed in a tailored black suit, looking every inch the powerful CEO. But his expression, cold, calculating, gave away the storm beneath the surface. Mr. Romano, I greeted smoothly, taking a sip of my drink. A pleasure. His gaze lingered on me, searching, burning. You look familiar. His voice was deep, controlled. But there was an edge to it. I arched a brow. Do I? His jaw clenched. I could almost hear his thoughts. You look like her. You look like my wife. You look like Emma. But he didn't say it. Instead, he took a step closer. Too close. The scent of his expensive cologne wrapped around me, dark and intoxicating. Who really are you? He asked quietly, his tone laced with suspicion. I smiled. A businesswoman, I answered simply. An investor. Someone interested in the Romano Empire. His eyes darkened. You saved my life, he murmured, almost to himself. And now, you want to invest in my company? Strange coincidence, isn't it? I tilted my head, letting amusement dance in my eyes. Jason didn't smile. His fingers curled around his glass, knuckles whitening. He was unraveling. Perfect. I brushed past him, leaving the scent of jasmine and danger in my wake. Enjoy your evening, Mr. Romano, I murmured before disappearing into the crowd. Chapter 11. The scent of expensive wine and ambition filled the air. I leaned back in my chair, swirling the deep red liquid in my glass, my lips curved into a soft, almost teasing smile as the man across from me kept sneaking glances at my legs. Tell me, Ms. Velasquez, the man said, his voice smooth, practiced. How does a woman as beautiful as you end up in a room full of ruthless businessmen? I took a slow sip of my wine, letting my lashes flutter slightly. Isn't that the only way to survive in this world, Mr. Carter? I murmured, tilting my head slightly. By playing in the lion's den? The men at the table chuckled, their eyes lingering on me. Greedy. Predictable. Men were always the same. Jason Romano, however, was different. I could feel him watching me. Even across the ballroom, even with 100 voices between us, his gaze burned through me like a brand. It had been 2 weeks since the airport. 2 weeks since I let him see my face. 2 weeks since I planted the seed of doubt in his mind. And now? Jason was unraveling. He was trying to act unaffected, standing by the bar with a drink in his hand, his usual cold mask in place. But I knew better. His fingers gripped the glass too tightly. His jaw ticked whenever someone got too close to me. And the moment I laughed at something Mr. Carter said, Jason stiffened. I almost wanted to laugh. Good. Let him burn. But I wasn't just here to haunt Jason. I had another rat to deal with. Lily Romano. The moment I stepped into the ballroom, her eyes had found me. Now, she was standing across the room, gripping her champagne flute as if she wanted to snap it in half. I could almost hear her thoughts. Who is she? Why does she look like? She didn't want to say it. Didn't want to acknowledge the truth she feared the most. That I looked exactly like the woman she helped destroy. Me. I met her gaze and smiled. Lily's fingers twitched. She wasn't just staring at me. She was studying me, my dress, my hair, my jewelry. She was looking for cracks, trying to find proof that I was just some cheap imitation. I stood, lifting my wine glass as I made my way toward her. She didn't move. She was waiting for me. Good. Mrs. Romano, I greeted, lovely evening, isn't it? Her lips pressed into a thin line. It is. She didn't return my smile. How rude of me, I continued, pretending to just now recognize her. We haven't been introduced properly. I'm Serafina Velasquez. She gave a forced smile. I know who you are. My lips twitched. Oh? That's interesting. I sipped my wine. And how exactly do you know me? She lifted her chin slightly. You helped my husband at the airport. Ah. So she was acknowledging it. Her voice was polite, but her eyes were screaming questions. Why do you look like her? Why does Jason keep staring at you? Who the hell are you? I smiled sweetly. Yes, I did. Silence. Lily shifted uncomfortably. She wasn't used to being ignored. She expected me to be intimidated. I wasn't. Instead, I tilted my head, pretending to study her. You're staring, Mrs. Romano, I pointed out playfully. She stiffened. You just look familiar. I let out a soft chuckle. I get that a lot. Her fingers curled slightly against her dress. Do you? I leaned in slightly. Yes. Some people say I remind them of someone they lost. Lily's eyes darkened. That struck a nerve. Good. Jason was still watching. I turned slightly, pretending not to notice the way his gaze flicked between me and Lily, his grip tightening around his glass. I lifted my wine glass to my lips, taking a slow sip. Let him stew. Let him question. Let him obsess. Jason's POV, who the fuck was she? I wasn't a man who got rattled. Hell, I built my empire on control, on calculated moves. No one messed with Jason Romano and walked away unscathed. And yet, ever since that goddamn airport, she had been in my head. Serafina Velasquez. Her voice. Her face. The way she fucking looked at me like she knew something I didn't. Like she was amused at my confusion. And that smile. That smile. It was Emma's. But not. Her hair was different. Her voice had a softer lilt. But when she tilted her head, when she met my gaze with that unreadable smirk, my blood ran cold. And my body? Fucking traitorous. My pulse kicked up whenever she was near. My jaw clenched when she laughed with other men. My hands curled into fists when I saw their eyes lingering on her, full of hunger. She had been in my thoughts for 2 fucking weeks. I had never been this obsessed. Never. Not even with Emma. This was different. It was dangerous. I watched her now, standing across the ballroom in that sleek black dress that clung to her curves like sin. A glass of wine in her hand, laughter on her lips. Too fucking perfect. And the men around her? Like dogs in heat. I fucking hated it. I downed my drink, ignoring the burn as I turned to Donovan, my head of security. Who the fuck is she? Donovan didn't even blink. She checks out. Clean record. A high-profile investor, but no shady dealings. I laughed, low and sharp. That's bullshit. No one is that clean. Donovan hesitated. She's been in Europe for years. Built a name for herself in business. Recently relocated here. My jaw tightened. Too perfect. Too fucking convenient. There was no way she just happened to be at that airport when I nearly fucking died. No way she just happened to have the antidote I needed. And now, she just happened to be here? Slipping into my world, into my business? I wasn't buying it. I wasn't fucking stupid. I lifted my glass again, eyes locked on her as she turned and looked straight at me. And smiled. A slow, knowing smile. My grip tightened on the glass so hard I almost shattered it. She was fucking with me. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but Serafina Velasquez was playing a game. And if she thought she could toy with Jason Romano, she was dead fucking wrong. Because I would find out the truth. And when I did? She was mine. Chapter 12, Serafina's POV. I played my role perfectly. Every touch. Every glance. Every soft-spoken word. Jason Romano didn't even realize I was sinking my claws deeper into him every single day. It started with simple things. Passing comments. Innocent questions. A fleeting touch on his arm when we talked. A knowing smile when Lily snapped at me, and Jason for once in his life didn't immediately jump to her defense. I didn't push. I didn't rush. I let him come to me. And he did. Faster than I expected. At first, it was small casual conversations, business meetings where he lingered just a little longer than necessary. Then it escalated. Late night calls. Drinks after meetings. Jason Romano was falling into my trap, piece by piece. I could see it in his eyes, the hesitation, the growing doubts about Lily, the way he started to confide in me like I was someone he could trust. Fool. He didn't even realize I was leading him exactly where I wanted him to be. It started subtly. A carefully placed word here, a thoughtful silence there. I let him vent, let him talk about the things that bothered him, Lily's sudden mood swings, the way she kept pressing him about me. She's been acting paranoid lately, Jason admitted one night over drinks, his fingers running over the rim of his glass. Like she's hiding something. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. Why would she? Jason exhaled sharply, shaking his head. I don't fucking know. But every time I mention you, she loses her shit. I hummed, swirling the wine in my glass. Maybe she's afraid of losing you. Jason scoffed, but something flickered in his gaze. Doubt. Good. I let the silence stretch, watching him struggle with his own thoughts. You remind me of someone, he finally admitted. My lips curled slightly. Oh? His jaw tensed. Emma. I leaned back, my expression unreadable. Your wife. Jason nodded slowly, eyes dark. You look like her. I smiled, soft and mysterious. But I'm not her. Jason's gaze darkened. His fingers flexed, his breath uneven. He was sinking. And now? He was inviting me to his fucking birthday. The invitation came 2 days before his party. A black envelope. Elegant gold lettering. Jason Romano's private birthday celebration. The moment I saw it, my lips curled. Of course, he wanted me there. Of course. I let the invitation sit on my desk for hours, pretending I was debating whether to accept. But in reality? I had been waiting for this. I had already planned exactly what I was going to wear. Plus the Romano estate was grand, elegant, and filled with people who didn't give a damn about Jason but wanted to be seen at his event. I arrived late. On purpose. The moment I stepped inside, conversation slowed. Eyes turned. A hush fell over the crowd. Because I didn't just dress for the occasion. I dressed to haunt. A black silk dress clung to my frame, the same shade Emma used to wear. My hair, styled in soft waves, cascaded down my back exactly like hers had years ago. Even my perfume, the one scent Jason always associated with Emma, wrapped around me like a ghostly whisper. Jason didn't notice me at first. Not until the murmurs started. Not until people turned to stare. Not until someone gasped, whispering Emma? His head snapped up. And when his eyes landed on me, he fucking froze. The reaction was immediate. His drink halted midair. His jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. But he wasn't the only one. Across the room, they stood. Edward and Isabella Moretti. My parents. And their golden fucking child Lily. My breath hitched, but I forced my expression to remain cold. Indifferent. They were nothing to me now. But that didn't mean I didn't remember. Didn't ache. Didn't burn. I saw the shock in my mother's eyes, the way her fingers tightened around her champagne glass. My father's expression remained unreadable, but there was tension in his stance. Lily, however. Her face twisted into something ugly. Like she'd seen a ghost. PFF, good. I let my gaze sweep over them slowly, deliberately, before turning away, as if they were beneath my notice. I walked straight to Jason. He was still staring, still gripping his glass like he wanted to crush it. Happy birthday, Mr. Romano, I murmured, voice smooth as silk. Jason swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. Emma. I blinked. Then, slowly, my lips curled. Emma? I let out a low, sultry laugh, stepping closer. Oh, Mr. Romano. I'm Serafina, silly. I reached out, lightly tracing the rim of his glass with my fingertip. I'm hurt. You always forget my name. His breath hitched. You called me that at the airport too, I whispered, watching him carefully. I'm a little hurt, I tilted my head, voice teasing, but my eyes told another story. Jason's grip tightened on his drink, his knuckles white. He was unraveling. Perfect. Let him drown in his own ghosts. I sipped my wine, never breaking eye contact. But even as I stood there, wrapped in my little game, the past clawed its way back. I could still remember. Every fucking thing. I stared at them, especially my parents, but all I saw was my childhood. The countless times Lily took everything from me. Everything. I could still hear her voice. I want it, she would scream whenever I got something new. And just like that it was hers. My toys? Gone. My dresses? Taken. Even my diaries. The words I wrote in secret, my private thoughts, were stolen and read aloud for everyone to laugh at. And when she got bored of them? She'd ruin them. Rip my dresses. Throw my books in the mud. And my parents? They let her. No. They encouraged it. You're the older sister, my mother would say with a sigh. You should give in to Lily. She's younger. Don't be so selfish, Emma. Selfish? I was selfish for wanting something for myself? For wanting to be seen? For wanting to exist outside of Lily's fucking shadow? But the worst part? The absolute worst part? It wasn't the stolen gifts. It wasn't the dresses thrown in the trash. It was the way they made me feel like I was worth nothing. Chapter 13. I clenched my fists as the memory surfaced. My birthday. I was turning 16. I came downstairs, hopeful for once. Maybe just maybe this year would be different. Maybe this time, they'd actually care. And what did I get? An envelope. No cake. No party. Not even a hug. Just a fucking envelope with money. Buy what you want, my father had said, not even looking at me. That was it. No celebration. No love. Nothing. But when Lily's birthday came? A fucking spectacle. A mansion decorated in gold and pink. Lavish gifts stacked higher than she could reach. And my father? He handed her the keys to a brand new sports car. She was 16. But she got a car. And I got an envelope. And then came the sickness. The day I collapsed in my bedroom, my head splitting open with unbearable pain. I was barely conscious when I begged for help. Mom, please. I feel like I'm dying. And she? She didn't even look at me. Stop the drama, Emma, she said, and walked away. If it weren't for the maid who called 911, I would have died that night. I spent days in the hospital. Alone. No visits. No phone calls. Just the two maids who sat beside me, guilt-ridden, whispering apologies. But when Lily had a stomachache? Panic. Doctors rushed to our house. She was admitted to a private hospital immediately, and my parents stayed by her side the entire time. They held her hand. They comforted her. They loved her. And me? I was nothing. I snapped back to the present, my nails digging into my palms so hard I nearly drew blood. But I smiled. I smiled because now, I wasn't the forgotten, unloved daughter. I was Serafina Velasquez. A woman they couldn't control. A woman they couldn't erase. A woman who was going to ruin them all. So I turned away from them, walking past my parents and my perfect sister as if they were invisible. As if they didn't matter. Because to me? They never did. I reached Jason and took his drink from his hands, raising it to my lips. His eyes flickered to my mouth, dark and hungry. Enjoying your party? I murmured, sipping the whiskey slowly. Not until now. I tilted my head, watching the way his body tensed. The way his fingers twitched. The way he ached for something he didn't even understand. Oh, Jason. You were already mine. You just didn't know it yet. Lily moved fast, her heels clicking against the floor as she rushed to Jason's side like a leech. Jason. Her voice was high-pitched, forced, and just a little too loud. TSK, pathetic. She wrapped herself around his arm, pressing her body against him as if she could physically stake her claim. Jason barely reacted. His jaw was still tight, his eyes still locked on me. Lily noticed. And it infuriated her. Her fingers dug into Jason's arm. "Baby, you promised to dance with me," she purred. Jason blinked, like he was snapping out of a trance. He sighed, pulling his gaze away from me. "Lily, not now," he muttered, rubbing his temple. But before she could whine again, his phone rang. An important call, judging by the way his entire demeanor changed. "I have to take this," Jason said, pulling his arm from Lily's grasp. She looked like she wanted to protest, but Jason was already stepping outside. Which meant it was just me and her now. And I was so ready for this. The second Jason was out of sight slap. My head barely moved from the impact. I saw it coming. Expected it. Lily's hand trembled after hitting me, her eyes burning with rage. I let the sting settle, let the room breathe, and then I laughed. Because of course. Of course she would do this. "You're insane," I chuckled, rubbing my cheek lightly. Lily's lips curled in disgust. "Stop seducing my husband, you whore." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Seducing? Lily, sweetheart, I barely touched him. He was the one staring at me." "Shut up," she snapped, stepping closer. "I see what you're doing. You think because you're some rich bitch now, you can waltz in here and take what's mine?" I raised a brow. "Take what's yours." Lily's nails dug into her palms. "Jason is mine. This life is mine. You're nothing but an outsider trying to dash," I sighed dramatically. "Let me guess. You think I planned all of this? That I came here just to ruin your precious little fantasy?" Lily clenched her teeth. "Stay away from him." I smiled. "Slow. Taunting. Or what?" I whispered. Lily's eyes flared. I could see how much she wanted to slap me again. But before she could, another voice sliced through the air. "What's going on here?" I turned to see them. Edward and Isabella Moretti. My parents. Even now, the sight of them made my stomach turn. My mother looked at me like I was filth under her shoe. And my father? His eyes carried nothing but disgust. "Who is this woman, Lily?" Isabella demanded. "Why is she acting so familiar with your husband?" Lily huffed, playing the victim. "Mom, she's just some woman trying to throw herself at Jason." Isabella's eyes snapped to me, sharp and cutting. "So you're a mistress?" I just stared at her. "How disgusting," she sneered. "I pity your mother for giving birth to something so shameless." Ah. There it was. That cold, dismissive tone. The same one she used when I was a child. But this time? I wasn't that pathetic little girl anymore. I smirked. "Oh, Mrs. Moretti, you have no idea what kind of pity my mother deserves." My father stepped forward then, shaking his head. "What a disgrace. A woman like you has no class, no dignity. You think you can just walk into a man's life and steal him away?" I exhaled a laugh. "Oh, Mr. Moretti. If you only knew how ironic your words are." Edward's face darkened. "Excuse me?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just admiring how much of a hypocrite you are." His nostrils flared. "Watch your mouth, girl. Girl. Not daughter. Never daughter. Of course, because she thinks I'm dead on that fire." How fitting. But before I could land another verbal punch, a tiny voice pierced through the tension. "Mommy." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. No. This can't be. Slowly, I turned. And there he was. Noah. My baby. Running toward Lily. And calling her mommy. Chapter 14. My entire world cracked. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I just stood there. Watching as my flesh and blood ran straight into Lily's arms. Lily smirked. She fucking smirked. And it killed me. But then Noah looked up. His innocent little face scrunched in confusion as he saw me. His eyes widened. "And Mommy? Is that you?" My heart stopped. I opened my mouth. No words came out. Noah took a hesitant step toward me. Mommy. Panic. I felt it rise, suffocating me. I forced myself to smile. To lie. And no, sweetheart, I said softly, my voice steady even though my world was shattering. You must be mistaken. Noah blinked. But, you look like I'm not your mommy, darling. I took a step back. Then another. I'm just a guest. Noah frowned. Oh, okay. His little voice broke me. I turned on my heel and walked away. No one stopped me. I made it to the restroom before my body finally collapsed. I clutched the sink, gasping for breath. Noah. My son. He forgot me. And I had to pretend he was right. A sob crawled up my throat, but I swallowed it down. I stared at my reflection. My chest ached. My hands trembled. But my eyes? My eyes burned with fury. This isn't over. Lily stole my husband. She stole my family. She stole my son. And I'm going to make her pay. I left the party without looking back. The moment I stepped out of that suffocating house filled with people who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as me, I dialed his number. It didn't even ring twice before Ethan picked up. Where are you? His voice was steady, but I could hear the sharp edge underneath. Coming home, I murmured, my throat tight. I'll be there. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. By the time I arrived at Ethan's penthouse, the place he let me stay, the place that had become my sanctuary, he was already there, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The city lights cast long shadows over his face, but his dark eyes softened the moment he saw me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The second I stepped inside, I broke down. I barely made it to him before the first sob ripped out of my chest. Ethan caught me immediately, his strong arms wrapping around me as I buried my face in his shoulder. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask. He just let me fall apart. Noah called me mommy, I whispered, my voice cracking. Ethan stiffened slightly, but his grip on me remained firm, grounding. I sucked in a shaky breath. He looked at me with those big, innocent eyes, and for a second, it was like my fingers curled into Ethan's shirt. Like he remembered me. Like he knew me. And I had to lie to him. I had to tell him I wasn't his mother. The pain choked me. I squeezed my eyes shut, the image of Noah's confused, heartbroken face burning behind my lids. I could see it, Ethan, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. I could see how much he missed me. How much he needed me. And my breath hitched. I had to pretend I was a stranger. I had to walk away. Ethan didn't speak. He just held me closer, his hands smoothing down my back in slow, steady strokes. You don't have to do this alone, Serafina, he murmured after a long silence. I knew what he meant. I pulled back slightly, looking up at him. His dark gaze was unreadable, but I knew Ethan well enough to recognize the lethal promise in his eyes. Do you still want to do this yourself, he asked quietly, or do you want me to handle it? There was no need for elaboration. I knew exactly what he was offering. With one snap of his fingers, Ethan could burn everything to the ground. He could crush Jason, Lily, my parents, all of them without me lifting a single finger. But I inhaled slowly, then exhaled. No, I said firmly. I want to do it. Something flickered in Ethan's gaze. Something unreadable. Then he gave a slow nod. All right. He didn't argue. He didn't try to convince me otherwise. He just trusted me. Later that night, Ethan and I sat on the balcony, whiskey glasses in hand, watching the city stretch out below us. The silence was comfortable. But then, do you still love him? Ethan asked suddenly. I turned my head slightly, meeting his gaze. Jason. Jason Romano. The man I once gave everything to. The man who had shattered me beyond repair. I looked down at my whiskey, letting the question settle in the air. Then I answered. No. The moment he betrayed me, he killed every last piece of love I had for him. Ethan didn't react right away. But when he finally spoke, his voice was softer. Good. I glanced at him. Why? Ethan swirled the whiskey in his glass, eyes distant. Because he never deserved you, he murmured. And he never will. I stared at him. And for just a second, just a fleeting, stolen moment, something achingly raw passed through his gaze. But then it was gone. And so was any chance of asking what it meant. For the next week, I disappeared. I ignored Jason's calls. I ignored his messages. And while I lay low, Lily started falling apart. I knew it was happening even before I got the confirmation. The whispers had already started. Lily Romano has been acting strange lately. She's paranoid. Snapping at people for no reason. She thinks someone is out to get her. Good. Let her rot in her own fear. And then, I sent the package. It was simple. A small box. Wrapped neatly. Delivered straight to Jason's office. Inside? Old photos. Of him and Emma. Smiling. Holding hands. Kissing. Happier times. Lily saw them before Jason did. And she lost it. What the hell are these? She screamed, shoving the pictures at Jason's chest. Chapter 15. Jason barely lifted his head. They're pictures, he said, voice bored. Of your dead wife. Lily screeched, hands trembling. Why the hell are these here? Jason exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temple. I don't know, Lily. Maybe because she was my wife and people took pictures of us? Crazy concept. Lily's hands curled into fists. Don't you dare play smart with me, Jason. Someone sent them. Someone put them in a box and had them delivered here. What the hell do you think that means? Jason leaned back in his chair, glancing at the photos. His jaw tensed just slightly. Lily saw it. And it infuriated her. You don't even seem bothered, she snapped. Jason let out a long sigh, pinching the bridge of his nose. They're just photos, Lily. They're not just photos. Lily shrieked, slamming her palm on the desk. Do you even hear yourself? These are pictures of your wife. Your dead wife. My late sister. And someone who clearly knows what happened sent them to you. Don't you think that's so, I don't know, fucking terrifying? Jason looked at her, expression unreadable. Who said they know what happened? Lily froze. Jason's gaze darkened. Unless you're feeling guilty about something? Lily's lips parted, but no words came out. Jason leaned forward slightly, elbows on the desk, eyes sharp. You seem a little too panicked, Lily. Why? Because of some old photos? Or because, deep down, you're worried about something else? Lily's entire body stiffened. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Jason arched a brow. Because right now, it almost seems like you're the one with something to hide. I don't have to stand here and listen to this. She spun on her heel, stomping toward the door. Lily, Jason called after her. She paused but didn't turn around. Jason's voice was quieter now, slower. If you're so sure Emma's dead, why are you so scared? Lily's fingers dug into her palm. Because she wasn't scared of Emma being dead. She was scared that Emma wasn't. Lily's POV. I couldn't stop staring at the goddamn pictures. They felt hot in my hands, as if they had been set ablaze the moment I touched them. My nails dug into the glossy prints, nearly tearing them apart, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, not yet. Not when my entire body was shaking with so much rage that I could barely breathe. Emma. Fucking Emma. Even dead, she was still ruining my life. I stormed into the mansion, my heels clicking furiously against the polished marble floors, echoing through the grand entryway like gunshots. The rage inside me had reached its boiling point, bubbling up my throat like poison, ready to spill over and burn everything in its path. Arg. I flung my handbag onto the couch with a sharp thud, my breath coming out in short, shallow bursts. Marta. I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Get me a glass of wine. The expensive one. Now. The maid, an older woman with downcast eyes, barely hesitated before scurrying off toward the kitchen. She knew better than to test me when I was like this. I collapsed onto the couch, my fingers still clenched around the cursed photographs, my knuckles turning white from the force of my grip. Jason hadn't even reacted when I threw these at him earlier. He barely even looked at them. Like they meant nothing to him. Like I meant nothing to him. My jaw clenched so tightly it ached. I could feel the rage coiling in my chest like a serpent, twisting and twisting until I could hardly contain it. I was so close to getting everything I ever wanted. I had Jason. I had his name. His love. His power. And then, out of nowhere, that bitch Serafina Velasquez showed up, and suddenly, Jason started pulling away. Ignoring me. Avoiding me. That woman, who had no right to walk around with Emma's face, was ruining everything. I inhaled sharply, my vision going blurry with rage, my breath coming out in uneven bursts. I won't let her win. I refuse to let her win. As if on cue, my phone vibrated against the coffee table, the sound piercing through the suffocating silence of the room. I snatched it up without even glancing at the caller ID and pressed it to my ear. "Mom," I exhaled, my voice shaking but calculated. "You need to come over. Now." It didn't take long before I heard the distinct click-clack of designer heels against marble. The scent of expensive Chanel No. 5 filled the air, wrapping around me like silk before my mother even stepped into the living room. "Where's my beautiful daughter?" Isabella cooed, striding in like she owned the place. She was perfect, as always. A fitted navy blue dress clung to her hourglass figure, her pearl necklace gleamed under the chandelier, and her platinum blonde hair was styled into a flawless French twist. She didn't just walk into a room, she commanded it. And right now? I needed her. I sprang up from the couch and practically threw myself into her arms, playing the role of the devastated daughter to perfection. "Mom," I hiccuped, my voice perfectly weak, perfectly heartbroken. "It's happening again." She pulled back slightly. Her manicured fingers cupping my face, while her expression perfectly poised. "What is, my love?" I bit my lip, let my eyes glisten with unshed tears, and then with a trembling hand I shoved the stack of photographs into hers. Her expression darkened the moment her eyes landed on them. Her gaze flickered over the images, Emma and Jason, smiling, in love, and I saw the subtle twitch in her jaw. She hated it just as much as I did. With a click of her tongue, she shook her head, sighing as if the very sight of these pictures offended her. "Why are you torturing yourself with these, darling?" I let out a dramatic sniffle, dabbing at my perfectly done-up makeup. "Because, Mom. That's why my baby died." Her head snapped up. "What?" I nodded furiously. "Ever since Emma died, I've been so guilty." I sniffled again, my voice breaking at just the right moment. I was so stressed, so heartbroken, so devastated that I lost my baby. It was a lie, of course. I didn't lose that baby because of stress. I got rid of it. Because what the fuck did I want with some screaming brat? Ruining my body? Making me fat and ugly? Absolutely not. But my mother didn't need to know that. Chapter 16. Her sharp features softened instantly, her hands brushing my hair back with a mother's practiced tenderness. "Oh, my sweet girl," she cooed, "that was never your fault." I hiccuped for dramatic effect. "But now it's happening again. Jason is pulling away from me, Mom. I can feel it." Her expression darkened. "Is this because of that woman?" I nodded, that whore is ruining everything." I snapped. "Jason barely looks at me anymore. He avoids me, Mom. And you know why?" She tilted her head, waiting. I threw my arms up, my voice rising. "Because she looks like fucking Emma. That's why." Silence. Then, my mother let out a slow breath, a knowing, sly smile curling on her lips. "Then don't worry, my love," she purred. "Leave it to me." I perked up instantly. "You mean dash?" She pressed a perfectly manicured finger against my lips. "Shoo," she whispered. "I'll take care of it. That woman might look like your dead sister, but we never loved Emma anyway." I let out a shaky breath. I had always known I was the favorite. But hearing it like that? It felt so damn good. My mother kissed my forehead and adjusted her purse. "I have some things to do, but don't stress yourself, my love. I'll handle it." I beamed. "Thank you, Mommy." She gave me a wink before walking out. And just like that, I know everything would be fine. Right? The moment my mother left, the front door swung open again. I groaned, already knowing who it was. Noah. He walked in, his backpack slung over his small shoulders, two of Jason's ever-present guards flanking him. His little face lit up when he saw me, his big brown eyes filled with something sickeningly hopeful. Mommy, he ran to me, arms stretched out like a desperate little puppy. I stepped back so fast he nearly tripped. Don't touch me, I snapped, my voice sharp and ice cold. He stumbled slightly, confusion flickering across his face. Mommy, his excitement instantly replaced with uncertainty. I crossed my arms, looking down at him in disgust. I told you, Noah. Until your father remembers that I'm the most important person in his life again, don't expect me to care about you. His little fingers curled into fists. I almost laughed. Like he was some big, strong man instead of a pathetic little kid who still needed someone to tie his shoelaces. But I cut him off, my voice slicing through the air like a whip. Don't come near me, I spat, my eyes narrowing. I hate children. His lip trembled. He didn't cry. But his eyes broke. He stared at me for a long moment. Like he was finally realizing I would never love him. Not the way his real mother did. And I smirked. Go to your room, Noah, I sighed dramatically. You're annoying me. He hesitated. Then, finally, oh damn finally, he turned around and walked away, his small shoulders stiff. And I poured myself another generous glass of wine, humming to myself. Because whatever. I'd win Jason back soon enough. And when I did, everything would be perfect. Plus Serafina's POV. Jason was crumbling. I could see it in the way his grip tightened around his whiskey glass, in the way his gaze flickered over me like a man walking straight into damnation and not even realizing it. He was avoiding Lily now. Spending more time with me. And he didn't even know why. Pathetic. I swirled the wine in my glass, watching him from across the dimly lit bar of his private lounge. The entire place was empty except for us, the distant hum of city life muffled by thick glass windows. He had invited me here. Just us. And I had agreed. Because of course I did. You affect me, Serafina, Jason admitted, his voice low and rough, as if he hated saying it out loud. I don't understand it. I tilted my head, letting a small smile touch my lips. Should I be flattered? His jaw clenched. I don't know. Good. I took a slow sip of my wine, pretending to be unaffected, but inside? I was savoring this. The way he looked at me like I was haunting him. Like I was the ghost of his sins wrapped in silk and perfume, slipping through his fingers no matter how much he wanted to hold on. Jason set his glass down with a quiet thud, exhaling sharply. I shouldn't be here, he muttered, running a hand through his dark hair. I shouldn't be doing this. Doing what? I asked innocently. His eyes snapped to mine. Trapped. Jason let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. I should be with Lily, but I can't even bring myself to care anymore. I didn't respond. I just waited. Because when a man like Jason Santiago started talking, you let him. He let out a sharp breath, gripping his glass like he wanted to shatter it. Our relationship hasn't been the same since, he hesitated, then finally said, since she lost the baby. I blinked, tilting my head. The baby? He ran a hand down his face, his expression hardening. She had a miscarriage a year ago. It messed her up. She changed after that. I thought maybe if we tried again, if she got pregnant again, things would go back to the way they were. He let out a humorless chuckle. But she hasn't gotten pregnant. No matter how many times we try. I swirled my wine, letting the silence stretch between us. Then I struck. Jason, I said softly, my voice gentle, hesitant, like I wasn't sure if I should say what I was thinking. His gaze snapped to mine instantly. What? I bit my lip, looking down at my glass like I was debating whether or not to speak. Are you sure she had a miscarriage? His entire body stilled. Slowly, his grip tightened around his glass. What do you mean? I looked up at him through my lashes, my expression carefully crafted. Soft. Concerned. Dangerous. Jason, I murmured, leaning in slightly. What if she didn't lose the baby? What if she got rid of it? Chapter 17. His breath hitched. I saw it. The way his fingers curled into a fist. The way his shoulders tensed. The way his jaw locked like he was gritting his teeth so hard it hurt. But he didn't say anything. So I continued. I exhaled softly, shaking my head. I've seen women who go through miscarriages. It breaks them. It leaves them shattered, grieving. But Lily? I tilted my head, feigning thoughtfulness. She seemed fine. Too fine. Jason didn't move. Didn't blink. I could almost hear the sound of the cracks forming inside his mind. I leaned in just a little closer, lowering my voice like I was telling him a secret. A woman who wants to be a mother doesn't just stop trying after one loss. She doesn't, I trailed off, letting the weight of my words sink in. Jason's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. You think she? I met his gaze head-on, letting a flicker of hesitation show in my eyes. I don't know, Jason, I said softly. But what if she didn't want that baby at all? Silence. He exhaled sharply, looking away, but I saw the way his fingers curled tighter. The way his breathing grew uneven. The way his mind was spinning. Doubt was a seed. And I had just planted it. Jason let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. Fuck. I stayed silent, watching him drown in his own thoughts. She wouldn't. His voice was hoarse, almost desperate. She wanted that baby. We both did. I smiled softly, tilting my head. Did she? Silence. He exhaled sharply, slamming his glass down. I don't know anymore. Perfect. Jason ran a hand through his hair, looking out over the city skyline. For the first time since I sat down, I saw something I hadn't seen in him before. Doubt. He wasn't sure. And that meant I had one. Slowly, carefully, I reached across the table, letting my fingers brush against his. His eyes flickered to mine instantly, searching, hesitating. Jason, I whispered, my voice soft. You deserve someone who wouldn't lie to you. He inhaled sharply. Then his phone rang. Lily. I saw her name flash across the screen, saw the way his jaw clenched like just seeing her name pissed him off. For the first time ever he let it ring. Didn't answer. And just like that Lily was losing. Jason exhaled sharply, reaching for the whiskey bottle and pouring himself another drink. And as he did, I lifted my wine glass to my lips, my smirk hidden behind the rim. Because soon, Jason Romano wouldn't be Lily's problem anymore. He'd be mine. To play with. That evening, while I sat in my office, casually sipping on a cup of espresso, I received a message from one of my sources. The media finally took the bait. With a slow, satisfied smile, I opened my laptop and pulled up the latest headlines. Exclusive, Lily Romano's secret affairs exposed. Was she always a homewrecker? I clicked on the article, my eyes scanning the words with silent amusement. Newly obtained reports confirmed that Lily Romano, wife of billionaire Jason Romano, had multiple illicit affairs during her years abroad. Several high-profile men have come forward, admitting to secret relationships with Mrs. Romano, some of whom were already in committed relationships at the time. I scrolled down, taking in the images of Lily wrapped around different men, politicians, businessmen, even married CEOs. And I knew this was only the beginning. Lily Romano was about to burn. Lily must have noticed Jason pulling away, because for the first time in years, she actually tried to seduce him. Pathetic. I wasn't there, of course, but I could imagine it clearly. Lily, draped in one of her designer silk robes, sprawled across their massive bed, trying to act seductive. But Jason? He wasn't buying it. I heard about the encounter later from one of my sources inside the mansion. Lily had walked into Jason's home office that night, wearing nothing but a lace slip, her expression carefully crafted into something sultry. She must have thought she still had power over him. She must have thought Jason would always want her. How wrong she was. Jason, baby, Lily had purred, leaning against his desk, her fingers trailing over the papers he had been working on. You've been so stressed lately. Why don't you come to bed? I'll help you relax. Jason didn't even look at her. Didn't even acknowledge her pathetic attempt. Get out. Lily's smile faltered. Jason, Jason snapped his pen in half. I said, get out. Lily froze. Because for the first time ever, Jason Romano was rejecting her. The next day, Jason showed up at my office. Unannounced. Uninvited. Unraveled. I was in the middle of reviewing some reports when my secretary's voice came through the intercom. Miss Serafina, Mr. Romano is here to see you. I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Jason? Here? I glanced at the clock. It was late, almost past office hours. I took a slow breath, then pressed the intercom. Let him in. Moments later, Jason stepped inside, his presence dominating the room like a storm. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had been running his fingers through it too much. And his eyes? Dark. Unsettled. He didn't say anything at first, just closed the door behind him and exhaled sharply. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head. Jason. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, finally, he spoke. I don't know why, but I feel like I can breathe when I'm around you. I let his words settle in the space between us. I knew exactly why he felt that way. I was rewriting his reality with every passing day. But instead of answering, I simply gestured toward the chair in front of my desk. Sit. Jason hesitated, then walked forward, sinking into the seat like a man carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. He just sat there, his hands clasped together, his gaze fixed on the city lights outside my window. I waited. Because men like Jason Romano didn't like silence. And sure enough, Lily, he let out a humorless chuckle, shaking his head. I don't even recognize her anymore. I lifted my brows slightly. What do you mean? Jason exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Did you see the news? He muttered. The fucking articles? I stayed silent. Of course, I saw them. I leaked them. But I didn't let that show. Instead, I frowned slightly, feigning concern. Chapter 18. I heard about it, I said carefully. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it. Jason let out a rough chuckle. I don't. But fuck, Serafina. It's like I'm seeing Lily for the first time. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his voice low. I thought I knew her, he admitted. Thought I loved her. I stayed quiet, watching him carefully. He let out a bitter breath. But now. I don't even know who the fuck she is. I took a slow sip of my espresso, letting the words sink in. Jason was questioning everything. And that was exactly what I wanted. Slowly, I leaned forward, lowering my voice just slightly. Jason, I murmured, what if she was never who you thought she was? His breath hitched. I saw it. I felt it. The cracks in his mind deepening. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. I don't know anymore. I let out a soft sigh, leaning back. You deserve better, I whispered. Jason's gaze snapped to mine. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, he let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. I think I already fucking know that. I smiled. Because Jason Romano was slipping right into my hands. The moment I stepped into the grand lobby of Ethan's penthouse, I knew something was off. And when I saw her standing there with 5 men dressed in black suits, my suspicions were confirmed. Isabella Moretti. The mother who never loved me. She stood there in her high heels, her designer coat draped over her shoulders, lips painted in a shade of red as cruel as her heart. Her manicured fingers clutched the strap of her expensive handbag, her expression a picture of calm poison. But I could see through it. I always could. She wasn't here for a casual conversation. She was here to put me in my place. For a brief second, I wondered if she would recognize me. If, after all these years, something in her soul would whisper, "This is your daughter." But of course, she wouldn't. Because she never cared to look at me when I was still Emma. And now? Now, I was Serafina. Mrs. Moretti. What a surprise. Her eyes narrowed. Let's talk, she said smoothly, her voice honey-coated venom. I could have refused. I could have walked away. But where was the fun in that? So, with an inviting smile, I gestured toward the entrance. Come in. Inside Ethan's penthouse, the air was crisp and silent. Ethan was still in Paris, handling business. I walked toward the kitchen, my heels clicking against the marble floor, and glanced at Isabella over my shoulder. Tea? Juice? She sat down on the couch, crossing her legs with the grace of a queen who thought she owned the world. Juice, she said dismissively. I poured her a glass, my hands moving too smoothly because I already knew what was coming next. And sure enough. The moment I handed her the drink, she lifted it, and threw it directly in my face. Splash. I didn't flinch. Didn't gasp. Didn't even wipe the sticky liquid off my skin. I just stood there, my face dripping, my breath steady. And then I laughed. Loud. Sharp. Merciless. As if she had just done something so hilarious I couldn't help but be amused. Isabella's eyes narrowed. What the hell is so funny? I tilted my head, wiping my face with a napkin, my laughter dying down into a soft chuckle. Oh, Mrs. Moretti, I sighed, shaking my head. You're just so predictable. Her lips curled. Listen here, you little whore. I don't care who you are, where you came from, or what kind of games you're playing, but you will stay away from Jason. I raised an eyebrow. Jason? I hummed. You mean the husband of your daughter? Her smirk returned. Good. So you know your place. I smiled sweetly. And then, tilting my head, I said "Oh, but Mrs. Moretti. Lily isn't his wife." Her expression darkened. I leaned in, lowering my voice into something almost teasing. She's just a mistress. Isabella's breath hitched. For the first time, her perfect, rich woman mask cracked. Lily is his wife, she snapped. I laughed again, softer this time, shaking my head. No, Mrs. Moretti. I heard. Emma was his wife. I tilted my head. Or did you forget? A sharp slap echoed in the air as Isabella's hand flew toward me, but before she could touch me, I caught her wrist midair. Her eyes widened. I tightened my grip just enough to make her flinch. "Tsk tisk," I murmured. "That's not very ladylike, Mrs. Moretti." She yanked her hand away, furious. I cut her off. Oh, and by the way, I added, walking toward the couch and picking up my phone, pretending to scroll through the news. I saw the latest headlines. Your daughter is quite the, what's the word? I smiled. Slut? No, fucking whore? Isabella's eyes flashed with rage. You bitch. I kept going. A mistress to married men, a scandal in the making, a woman who ruins relationships just because she likes the thrill. I sighed dramatically, shaking my head. Tsk. What a shame. Isabella lunged. But I stepped back, smirking. That's when she turned to her men, snapping her fingers. Teach this woman a lesson. Her 5 bodyguards advanced. I smiled. Because I was waiting for this. The first one moved to grab my arm. I twisted my wrist, grabbing his instead, flipping him over in one sharp movement. His body hit the floor with a loud thud. The second one tried to throw a punch. I ducked, kicked his legs from under him, and sent him crashing to the ground. The third tried to pull out a gun. I moved faster. One clean kick to his wrist, his gun went flying. Another swift elbow to his stomach, he doubled over. The fourth and fifth men hesitated. I smirked. Come on, I taunted. Is this all Isabella Moretti can afford? They growled and charged. But I had trained with Ethan. I had trained for revenge. A second later, one was on his knees, clutching his broken nose, and the other was groaning in pain, struggling to get up. All 5 men down. In less than 30 seconds. I dusted off my hands. And then I turned to Isabella. She was silent. Chapter 19. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into her handbag, while her lips pressed together so tightly they were white. I stepped closer, my voice dropping into something lower, something dangerous. Mrs. Moretti, I murmured, leaning in. If you ever try to threaten me again, I'll make sure the next news article isn't just about your daughter. I tilted my head, smiling sweetly. I'll make sure it's about you. Her fingers trembled. I took one last look at her and then, I walked away. Leaving Isabella Moretti standing in my home, surrounded by her defeated men. And for the first time she looked afraid. After the incident with Isabella in Ethan's penthouse, I knew the war had truly begun. She had left furious, humiliated, her threats lingering in the air like the last notes of a broken symphony. But I hadn't been shaken. No, I had been energized. So when the invitation for the charity gala arrived, I knew it was the perfect stage for my next move. The event was flawless. Grand chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, expensive wine being poured into crystal glasses, billionaires shaking hands, their wives whispering behind jeweled masks. The scent of money, power, and well-masked corruption lingered in the air like a delicate perfume. And me? I was standing right in the center of it. The cameras flashed the moment I arrived, and I let them. After all, this was what I wanted. I had planned everything: the timing, the location, and most importantly, the moment that would make headlines across the country. Because tonight, Jason Romano was going to be caught with me. And the world would burn for it. It happened just as I expected. Jason found me near the balcony, my glass of wine swirling in my hand as I pretended to be lost in thought. His presence was a storm rolling in, heavy, dark, intoxicating. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, stepping closer. I turned slightly, just enough to let the golden light catch my skin. "Why not?" I asked, voice light, innocent, like I didn't know exactly what I was doing. His jaw tightened. "Because I don't trust myself when you're around." The word sent a sharp thrill down my spine, but I masked it with a soft smile. "That's not my problem, Mr. Romano. You're playing a dangerous game, Serafina." I tilted my head, watching him. "And you're playing it with me." For a moment, we just stood there. Him, the man who once threw me away. Me, the woman who was about to destroy everything he thought he owned. And then I stepped closer. Just enough for the reporters hiding behind the curtains to catch the angle. Jason's hand brushed against my waist, just the barest touch, but it was enough. Enough to make it seem like we were caught in something intimate, something stolen, something forbidden. And the moment the flash went off, I knew. The story was already being written. Jason Romano. The ruthless billionaire. The powerful mafia king. Caught in an affair with Serafina. By the time Lily found out, the entire internet had exploded. Jason Romano and the mysterious beauty. Who is she? Romano's secret affair? Sources say he's been visiting her late at night. Lily Moretti. Romano in shambles as her husband grows distant. It was all too easy. And when Lily finally snapped, I was already waiting for it. "You whore." Lily's voice shrieked through Jason's office, her manicured nails slamming against his desk. "Do you know what the media is saying about us?" "About me?" Jason leaned back in his chair, exhaling a long, slow breath, as if he were bored by her tantrum. "Calm down, Lily. Calm down," she screeched. "Jason, they're saying you're having an affair. That she's your mistress." At that, Jason's lips curled into something almost amused. "That's interesting," he mused. "I thought you were the mistress." Lily's face paled. Stop embarrassing yourself," Jason cut her off, his voice low, commanding. "The media is trying to ruin my image, and you're playing right into it." Lily clenched her fists. "You don't even deny it," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jason only stared at her, his expression unreadable. "I don't owe anyone explanations." That was the moment Lily knew. She had already lost him. That night, I was sipping wine in Ethan's penthouse when the door opened. I didn't need to turn around to know it was him. Ethan's presence was always like ice cold, sharp, cutting through everything in its way. "You're playing with fire," he said, his voice as steady as ever. I took a slow sip, savoring the taste before finally meeting his gaze. "You always say that," I murmured. He stepped forward, his eyes scanning me like he was trying to see through me. "And you never listen." I sighed, setting my glass down. "Ethan, we've been over this." His jaw ticked. "Tell me you're not falling for him again." I laughed. "Falling for Jason?" I repeated, shaking my head. "Ethan, I don't love him. Not anymore." Ethan didn't look convinced. "Then why are you letting him get this close?" I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Because I want him close," I admitted. "The closer he is, the easier he is to destroy." Ethan studied me for a long moment, his eyes dark, unreadable. And then, finally, he sighed. "You're too good at this," he murmured. I smiled. "I know." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "Just don't lose yourself in the game, Serafina." I tilted my head. "You think I will?" Ethan didn't answer. But his silence said enough. The silence between us stretched, heavy and thick like a storm brewing on the horizon. Ethan's dark gaze was fixed on me, unreadable, calculating. I should have walked away. I tried to walk away. But the second I turned, my foot slid against the sleek marble floor, my balance tipping dangerously. A gasp barely left my lips before strong arms wrapped around me, pulling me back, steadying me effortlessly. Chapter 20. The shift in the air was immediate. A pulse. A tension. My hands pressed against Ethan's chest, the heat of his body seeping through his dress shirt. I could feel the steady, controlled rise and fall of his breathing, the way his fingers curled ever so slightly against my waist as if he wasn't sure whether to hold me tighter or let me go. And then his lips crashed against mine. The world tilted. My heart stopped. His grip tightened, one hand sliding up my back, the other cradling my jaw as he kissed me like he had been waiting for this moment forever. Like he had finally lost control. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was raw, hungry, full of unspoken words and emotions neither of us had dared to acknowledge. And God, I kissed him back. For a split second, nothing else existed. Not Jason. Not Lily. Not revenge. Just this. Just Ethan. But then my phone rang. Loud. Sharp. Jarring. The spell shattered. I ripped away from him, breathless, eyes wide in disbelief. Ethan's gaze was dark, stormy, 1,000 things swirling inside them. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me as if trying to read what the hell was going through my head. But I didn't give him the chance. I turned and ran. Straight to my room, locking the door behind me as if that flimsy lock could keep out what just happened. I pressed my fingers to my lips, my chest rising and falling too fast. My heart was pounding, my mind a mess. What the hell was that? Everything was falling perfectly into place. Jason was spiraling. Lily was losing her mind. Ethan kissed me. And now, all I had to do was keep playing my game, slowly unraveling every single one of them until nothing remained. That was the plan. That was supposed to be the plan. Until everything went black. One moment, I was stepping out of my office, the cool night air brushing against my skin. I barely had time to register the sound of footsteps behind me when I felt a sharp sting against my neck. A whisper of pain before my body betrayed me, my limbs going numb. My vision blurred, the world tilting, the ground rushing up to meet me. Then, darkness. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was cold. It seeped into my bones, biting at my skin like a cruel reminder that I was no longer in control. My wrists ached. Cuffs. Tight. Unforgiving. I blinked, my vision swimming, my head pounding from whatever the hell they drugged me with. The air was thick, suffocating, the scent of cigar smoke curling through the room like a ghost. Slowly, my vision adjusted to the dim light, revealing a space that was eerily empty, an expanse of marble floors and darkened walls, save for the massive wooden desk against the far end of the room. And the man sitting in the chair across from me. Edward Moretti. My father. The man who never gave a damn about me. He was leaning back, a cigar between his fingers, the tip glowing red as he took a long, slow drag. His expression was unreadable, but his dark eyes were sharp, calculating the way a man like him always was. Cold. Ruthless. A predator sizing up his prey. I exhaled, forcing my breathing to stay steady. So this was how it was going to be. Awake already? His voice was deep, smooth, laced with amusement. Good. I hate dealing with unconscious people. I shifted in my chair, testing the cuffs. Tight. No give. Figures. I would say it's nice to meet you, I murmured, tilting my head. But considering the circumstances. I'm guessing this isn't a social visit, Mr. Moretti? He smiled, slow and dangerous. Ah, he mused. So you know who I am. I raised a brow. Should I pretend I don't? His jaw tensed, but his smirk didn't fade. You're a bold one, he murmured, tapping ash onto the floor. I can see why Jason is so distracted these days. Jason. Lily. This was about them. Of course it was. Let me guess, I said, my voice steady. You think I'm his mistress? You think I'm some desperate little slut ruining your precious daughter's marriage? His smirk disappeared. You are, he said simply. I let out a laugh. Loud, sharp, amused. My God, I muttered, shaking my head. You really don't know, do you? Edward's gaze darkened. Know what? I smiled, slow and taunting. That Lily was never Jason's wife. That she was the one who ruined a marriage, not me. His expression didn't change, but I saw at the brief flicker of tension, the way his fingers tightened around his cigar. "You speak too much," he said coldly. "You ask too little," I shot back. "Tell me, Mr. Moretti, do you always come to your daughter's rescue, or is it just because Lily was always your favorite?" His eyes flashed. "Careful, girl." I smirked. "Why? Are you going to hit me?" The slap came so fast I barely saw it. Crack. Pain exploded across my cheek, my head snapping to the side. A sharp, metallic taste filled my mouth. Blood. I spat onto the floor, laughing as tears slipped down my cheeks. It hurt. But not as much as everything else. Edward exhaled harshly. "You don't know when to shut up, do you?" I lifted my gaze to him, eyes burning. "I learned from the best, didn't I?" His expression flickered. Just for a second. And then, he sighed. "You know," he mused, almost thoughtful, "you remind me of someone." I stilled. My pulse jumped. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at me like he was trying to solve me. "You have her eyes," he murmured. "That fire, that recklessness." I forced a smile. "Who?" Edward leaned back, taking another drag of his cigar. "Emma." I stopped breathing. The world narrowed. My heart pounded so hard I swore he could hear it. He couldn't know. He didn't know. He thought I was dead. And I had to keep it that way. I forced myself to exhale, tilting my head with a smirk. "Emma? You mean Lily's dead sister?" His eyes narrowed. "Funny," I continued, my tone light, mocking. "I heard she was a disappointment. That you didn't give a damn about her when she was alive." Chapter 21. His jaw ticked. I laughed. "Oh, did I hit a nerve?" I mused. "Do you feel guilty?" His hand twitched, like he wanted to hit me again. Good. I wanted him to lose control. Because men like him, men like Jason, like Edward, like every damn man who thought they could control me, they made mistakes when they lost control. And I didn't make mistakes. Not anymore. Edward exhaled sharply, standing to his feet. "You don't deserve my time." "Then why am I here?" I shot back. He smirked. "Because I need you to understand something, Serafina." I didn't move. Didn't blink. His gaze darkened. "If you don't walk away from Jason, if you don't disappear, I will make you wish you never stepped foot into my family's business." I smiled sweetly. "Ah. That almost sounded like a threat." He grinned, slow and wicked. "It wasn't. It was a promise." Then, with a snap of his fingers, his man unlocked my cuffs. I didn't move. I simply sat there, watching him. Waiting. Edward exhaled, flicking ash onto the floor before turning away. "Get rid of her." And just like that his men grabbed me, dragging me toward the door. My father's men dragged me to the car like I was nothing more than a sack of trash they were about to toss away. Their grips were rough, their hands tight around my arms as they shoved me into the back seat. The metal of the cuffs dug into my wrists, biting against my skin, but I didn't make a sound. I just let them. What was the point in fighting now? The car ride was silent, except for the occasional murmur between the two men in the front. I didn't recognize them. They weren't men from my past, weren't men who had once served under my father when I was still Emma Moretti, but that didn't matter. Loyal dogs were always the same. They followed orders. Even when those orders were to kill. I didn't ask where we were going. I already knew. And sure enough, when the car finally stopped, the heavy scent of salt and ocean filled my lungs. The seaside. A place where bodies disappeared, where the water swallowed secrets whole. I was yanked out of the car, my knees hitting the sand as they dragged me toward the shore. The waves crashed against the rocks, dark and endless under the moonlight. One of the men clicked his gun, pressing it against my head. I exhaled. So this was how it was going to end, huh? Not in a courtroom. Not with justice. Not with revenge. Just like this. A gun. A bullet. A forgotten body lost to the sea. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid. But I was angry. So angry. I never got to destroy Jason. Never got to break Lily. Never got to burn my father's empire to the ground. And all because I let my guard down. I bit my lip, tasting blood. No. I refused to die like this. Not yet. Not before they suffered. The man cocked the gun. A final breath. A final moment. And then bang. The shot rang out, loud and deafening, but it wasn't the one meant for me. Because in the next second, my captor collapsed. Blood splattered onto the sand, and chaos erupted. Gunfire. Screams. And then him. Ethan. He moved through the night like a shadow, like death itself, his men surrounding him, taking down every single bastard who dared to lay a hand on me. And when the last body hit the ground, when the only sound left was the crashing of the waves, he walked toward me. His face was stone. His eyes wild. And before I could say a word, before I could even breathe, he scooped me up in his arms. I didn't struggle. I didn't speak. I just let him. The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Ethan didn't say a word. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't check for injuries. He just sat there, staring out the window, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might break. And when we finally arrived, when he carried me inside and set me down, when the door clicked shut behind us, he snapped. With a roar, he turned and punched the glass wall. Crash. It shattered. Sharp shards scattered across the floor, the sound ringing in the silence. But I didn't flinch. I just stood there, watching as his hands trembled, as blood dripped from his knuckles. His breathing was ragged, his shoulders tense, his whole body shaking with rage. Look at you, he hissed, his voice low, furious. Look what the fuck almost happened to you tonight. I swallowed. Ethan Dash, you almost fucking died, Serafina. I forced out a breath, my heart pounding. But I didn't. He turned, eyes burning. You think that's the damn point? I said nothing. His fists clenched. I told you, didn't I? I fucking told you to be careful. I exhaled. And I was. Bullshit. He laughed, harsh and bitter. If I had been even a second late, you'd be at the bottom of the goddamn ocean right now. Silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating. And then, softer, rougher, I can't lose you. My breath caught. Ethan raked a hand through his hair, his voice dropping. I can't, Serafina. I looked away, my hands trembling. You won't. His jaw tensed. That's what you think. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure what I thought anymore. Ethan let out a harsh breath. You're playing a dangerous fucking game. I lifted my chin. I know. His gaze darkened. Then end it. I shook my head. I can't. Why the hell not? I exhaled. Because it's not over. He took a step forward. Serafina Dash, it's not over, I whispered, voice shaking. Not until I ruin them. Not until I take everything. Silence. Then, he laughed. Low. Cold. Dangerous. I should walk away, he murmured. I should let you destroy yourself. Chapter 22. I swallowed. Then why don't you? Because I can't. I sucked in a breath. Ethan stepped closer, his fingers grazing my cheek, his touch featherlight. You drive me fucking insane. I shivered. You're reckless. You're stubborn. You don't fucking listen. His lips hovered over mine, his breath warm against my skin. And then, barely a whisper. But God help me, I can't stay away. My heart slammed against my ribs. But before I could say anything, before I could even process what the hell was happening, he pulled away. Get some rest, he muttered, turning toward the door. We're not done talking about this. And then, just like that, he was gone. I let out a shaky breath, pressing my fingers against my lips. I wasn't sure what was more dangerous anymore. The game I was playing. Or Ethan Sullivan. After he left, I stayed curled up on the couch, my mind a mess, my body still aching from earlier. My wrists were raw from the cuffs, my skin bruised where my father's men had dragged me. But I didn't care about the pain. I cared about the fact that I had almost died. That if Ethan had been even a second late, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. The thought made my stomach twist. And then, the door opened. I looked up, heart pounding as Ethan walked in again, a bag of food and a bottle of alcohol in his hands. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were watching me. I didn't realize how hungry I was until Ethan placed the food in front of me. "Eat," he ordered, his voice rough but firm. "You haven't had a proper meal all day." I stared at the steaming plates: grilled steak, mashed potatoes, buttered vegetables, a bowl of hot soup, and felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't even noticed the hunger gnawing at me until now. Without a word, I picked up the fork and started eating. The moment the first bite hit my tongue, I almost moaned. It was good. Warm. Comforting. The kind of meal that reminded you were still alive. Ethan didn't speak as I ate. He just sat across from me, sipping his whiskey, watching me like a hawk. I should have felt uncomfortable under his gaze, but I didn't. This was Ethan. The man who saved me tonight. The man who carried me in his arms as if I weighed nothing, who killed for me without a second thought, who punched a glass wall in his fury because he almost lost me. And yet, despite all that, there was something unreadable in his expression. A quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. I finished my food and leaned back in my chair, exhaling. That was good. He nodded. You needed it. I gave him a look. You keep acting like I'm going to drop dead any second. His jaw tightened. You almost did. I swallowed, not sure how to respond to that. Then, without warning, he pulled out a thick folder and dropped it in front of me. I frowned. What's this? Open it. I hesitated for a second before flipping the file open. And the moment my eyes landed on the first page, my entire world tilted. I stared at the name printed in bold letters, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Malcolm. The richest family in Asia. And beneath it, Serafina Malcolm. Daughter. No. No, no, no. My pulse roared in my ears as I flipped through the pages, scanning the words, the details, the reports: kidnapped as a newborn, presumed dead, parents still searching, DNA confirmed match. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I turned to Ethan, my voice barely above a whisper. This isn't real. His expression didn't change. It is. I shook my head, gripping the papers so tightly my knuckles turned white. No. It's some kind of mistake. Some kind of sick joke. I belong to the Moretti - no, you don't. His voice was sharp. Final. But they raised me - they kidnapped you, Ethan corrected, leaning forward, his gaze burning into mine. You were stolen, Serafina. The Morettis took you from your real family to destroy your father. You were never theirs. My stomach twisted. I wanted to argue. To deny it. But the reports. The DNA results. I licked my lips, my throat dry. You dug into my past? Ethan exhaled, rubbing his jaw. I had my suspicions for a while. The way they treated you. The way they always favored Lily. The way Edward looked at you like you were a burden rather than a daughter. His voice darkened. I started digging. And the deeper I went, the more things didn't add up. I closed my eyes, my chest aching. And you found this? He nodded. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I felt like I was drowning. All this time, all these years, I thought I was a Moretti. Thought I was the unwanted daughter of a cruel father, the castaway, the disgrace. But I wasn't even that. I was a stolen child. A child that had been ripped from her true family before she ever had the chance to know them. I stared down at the reports, my vision blurring. They never loved me, I murmured, more to myself than to Ethan. He said nothing. Because he didn't need to. I laughed, a hollow, broken sound. I spent my whole life trying to prove myself to them. Trying to be enough. Trying to make them see me. I sucked in a sharp breath. And they never even wanted me in the first place. The truth cut deep. But at the same time, it was freeing. I lifted my gaze to Ethan. And my real parents? They're still looking for me? They never stopped. A lump formed in my throat. All this time. I thought I was alone. Thought I had no one. But I had a family. A real one. I want to meet them. Ethan studied me carefully. Are you sure? I don't know. Because if I was being honest, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Everything I thought I knew had been a lie. And now? Now, I had no idea where I belonged. Ethan reached across the table, his fingers grazing mine. A small touch. A silent reminder. I looked up, meeting his gaze. And for the first time that night, I realized I wasn't alone. Not completely. Ethan was here. Ethan cared. And right now, that was enough. Chapter 23. I never thought I would feel this way, like I belonged somewhere. Like I had a real family. Standing in the grand estate of the Malcolms, I was overwhelmed. My mother, Alina Malcolm, held my face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks as if she was afraid to blink and lose me again. My baby, my daughter, her voice cracked, and my chest ached at the raw emotion in her eyes. Beside her, my father, William Malcolm, looked at me like I had brought back the sun after years of darkness. We searched for you for so long, he said, his voice deep and steady, but I could hear the emotion buried underneath. And then there were my siblings. 3 of them. Sebastian, my older brother, with the same sharp features as mine, his expression a mixture of joy and disbelief. Celeste, my younger sister, who looked like a mirror of me, except her eyes shone with mischief and excitement. And Raphael, the youngest, who grinned like he had just won the lottery. You look just like us, Celeste whispered, touching my face as if she had to confirm I was real. I swallowed hard. I feel like I know you all already. It was instant. The bond. The connection. Like a missing piece had finally clicked into place. And in that moment, I vowed Edward and Isabella Moretti will pay for what they did to me. For stealing me. For discarding me. For making me believe I was nothing. And I would ruin Lily too. Because she knew. She had always known I wasn't really her sister. And yet, she let me suffer. She enjoyed my misery. I turned to my father, my real father, lifting my chin. When will the world know the truth? His lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. At the grand gala this weekend. Every elite will be there. Every camera. Every media outlet. The whole world will know that my daughter has returned. I smiled back, feeling the weight of my past begin to crumble. Then let's give them a show. The night of the gala, the air buzzed with tension. The grand ballroom was filled with the who's who of high society, billionaires, politicians, moguls, and media personalities. But I wasn't thinking about them. My eyes scanned the crowd as I stepped out of the sleek, long black limousine, my arm linked with Ethan's. The moment we arrived, the whispers began. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Reporters murmured furiously. Isn't that Dr. Ethan Sullivan, Serafina's rumored fiancé? No, wasn't she linked to Jason Romano before? Then why is she with Ethan Sullivan? Is she playing both? I smirked. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Dressed in a sleek, blood-red gown that clung to my curves and draped elegantly down to the floor, I looked like a queen beside Ethan, who wore a sharp black tux, and his presence commanding as ever. But as I stepped forward, I felt the weight of 2 particular stares. Jason. Edward. I met Jason's gaze first. He stood alone, his sharp suit impeccable, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with something dark and furious. Jealousy. And then, there was Edward. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he would break his teeth. His rage was palpable, and dang, his knuckles white as he gripped his glass. I smiled at both of them, slow and mocking. Let them seethe. Let them wonder how I was still alive. Ethan leaned down slightly, his voice brushing against my ear. You're enjoying this way too much. I tilted my head, pretending to be innocent. Am I? He chuckled. You're dangerous, princess. I smirked. I know. Inside, I turned to Ethan and whispered, leave me alone for a bit. I want to see what Lily does. He hesitated, his eyes narrowing. Are you sure? I smiled. Trust me. He sighed but nodded, brushing a soft kiss against my temple before stepping away. And just as expected, Lily took the bait. She strode straight toward me while her heels clicking against the marble floors, and her lips curled in a smug, triumphant smirk. Wow, she sneered. You just can't stop, can you? I tilted my head. What do you mean? She scoffed. First, you're my husband's mistress. And now you're leeching off Dr. Ethan Sullivan too? I sighed dramatically. Oh, honey, I cooed, placing a hand over my chest. I just love men and their attention. Then, I smirked. Just like you. You love stealing someone else's husband's attention, don't you? Her face twisted. Her hand rose. She swung. But I was faster. I stepped back, watching with amusement as she missed, her momentum almost sending her tumbling forward. If Edward hadn't caught her arm, she would have face-planted into the floor. The humiliation seared across her face. I smiled, tilting my head. Careful, Lily. Hate to see you ruin that pretty dress. She seethed. Edward's grip on her tightened before he turned to me, his mocking voice slicing through the air. You truly are a disgrace, he sneered. Still embarrassing yourself, I see. I laughed. Not the soft, fragile laugh of the girl they once knew. No. I laughed loudly, cruelly, fearlessly. I took a step closer, looking Edward dead in the eye. I'm about to embarrass you more than you can ever imagine. Too bad your men failed to kill me that night. His brows furrowed. What the hell are you talking about? But before he could finish, a microphone echoed through the room. And my father, William Malcolm, took the stage. My smirk deepened. It's time. Chapter 24. The moment my father stepped onto the grand stage, a hush fell over the crowd. The chatter, the whispers, the murmurs, they all ceased. Every pair of eyes turned toward him, drawn to his presence, his power. William Malcolm, the richest man in Asia, the man who controlled entire industries, the man who could buy and sell everyone in this room, stood before them, radiating authority. He lifted the microphone with an air of ease, his expression unreadable yet commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his deep, rich voice booming across the lavish ballroom. Welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. A polite round of applause rippled through the room. He nodded. It is a pleasure to host so many of our esteemed friends, allies, and business partners. Tonight is not just a celebration, it is a night of new beginnings. He gestured toward the front row, where Ethan stood beside me, calm and composed. A small smirk tugged at the corner of my lips. Jason stood a few feet away, his hands shoved into his pockets, his deadly gaze locked onto Ethan. I could feel his jealousy radiating like a storm about to break. My father continued. A special thanks to Dr. Ethan Sullivan. His lips quirked. A man who, as you all know, is one of the finest doctors in the world. But of course, that is merely the surface of who he is. There was a shift in the air. Curiosity sparked in the crowd. Because everyone knew the name Ethan Sullivan was not just tied to medicine. Everyone had heard rumors. Whispers of a man whose power stretched beyond hospitals and clinics. Ethan remained silent, his sharp blue eyes glinting as he raised a brow ever so slightly. My father smiled. Let's just say, Dr. Sullivan's influence reaches far beyond what most of you realize. Gasps. Murmurs. Stolen glances. Ethan only smirked. Of course, my father continued smoothly, I must also acknowledge the esteemed Moretti family. Edward puffed his chest, his lips curling into a smug smirk. Beside him, Isabella lifted her chin, a pleased expression settling on her face. And Lily, oh, Lily. She practically preened, her fake smile widening as if she were a damn queen. I almost rolled my eyes. She had no idea what was coming. And of course, my father's voice rang out, Jason Romano. Jason remained motionless, his face void of emotion. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. The storm brewing beneath. My father exhaled, gripping the microphone tighter. His voice lowered, filled with something undeniable. Tonight, I have gathered you all here for an important announcement. One that will change everything. The air thickened. The anticipation clawed at the crowd. I could feel the tension. The energy. Then, tonight, I introduce you all to my daughter. Gasps. Confusion. Shock. My father turned to me, extending a hand. Serafina Malcolm. Silence. And then, the ballroom exploded. What? Did he say daughter? Since when did William Malcolm have another child? Serafina Malcolm? But a sharp gasp cut through the commotion. Lily. She was the first to recover from the shock, her eyes wild, her face twisted in disbelief. She pointed a trembling finger at me, voice sharp, shrill, desperate. "Are you sure she's your daughter?" she demanded. "She's nothing but a mistress. She seduced my husband." I merely smiled. "Oh, Lily," I drawled. "Still holding on to that little fairy tale?" She seethed. The crowd murmured louder. "I don't believe it," Isabella suddenly interjected, her voice dripping with venom. "This must be some kind of mistake." She laughed, but it was forced, strained. "Serafina Malcolm? No, no. She's a nobody. A woman who chases after men with power, first Jason, now Ethan Sullivan?" I arched a brow. "Jealous?" Isabella's face darkened. I turned, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as I strode toward my father, William Malcolm. The room was dead silent, save for the hurried whispers, the frantic breaths of those who couldn't believe what they had just heard. Edward's eyes were blazing with fury. Isabella was still stiff, her manicured nails gripping the edge of the banquet table as if she could claw her way out of this. And Lily, pathetic, seething Lily, stood frozen in place, her face drained of color, her hands balled into trembling fists. I reached my father's side. He didn't hesitate, he handed me the microphone. The cameras shifted instantly. Bright lights focused on me, the media scrambling to capture every moment, every shift in expression, every single word about to spill from my lips. This was it. The moment the world would know. I exhaled slowly, gripping the microphone with steady fingers. Then I spoke. "My name," I repeated, my voice stronger, firmer, unshakable, "is Emma Moretti." Before. A ripple of gasps crashed through the ballroom. But I wasn't finished. I turned my gaze toward the cameras. I was born as the daughter of William and Evelyn Malcolm. I was their daughter, the child they lost. The child that was stolen. More murmurs. Shock. I continued, my voice carrying across the hall, reaching every ear, every corner. The Moretti family abducted me when I was just a newborn. They raised me not as a daughter, but as an inconvenience. As someone they could use, mold, discard when they saw fit. My eyes found Edward Moretti's. He looked like he wanted to strangle me. Good. I lifted my chin. They never gave me love. They never gave me kindness. They never treated me as their own. I let the bitterness seep into my tone. Because I never was. A sharp breath from Isabella. Lily shook her head violently, her lips trembling. "You're lying," she hissed. "You're dash," I cut her off. "I am a Malcolm," I declared, eyes burning into hers. "And the world will know who I really am." Lily flinched. Jason finally moved. His dark eyes locked onto mine, his jaw clenching so hard I thought it might crack. I could see it now, the anger, the realization, the regret. And then, the lights dimmed. The murmurs in the grand ballroom quieted as the massive screen at the front flickered to life. The screen turned black before a soft hum of static echoed through the hall. Then a video began to play. Chapter 25. At first, it was just me. Emma Moretti. A frail, broken woman sitting on the edge of a hospital bed, and four in my arm, my skin pale, my lips dry. And then, my voice from the past. "If you're watching this, it means I've succeeded." Gasps rippled through the room. Jason's entire body stiffened beside Lily. Edward's hand twitched at his side. Lily's expression was pure horror. I smirked. I was dying. Stage 4 brain cancer. I had months left to live. And while I was fighting for my life, my beloved husband Jason Romano was fucking my sister, Lily Moretti. A sharp gasp echoed, followed by chaotic murmurs. Jason's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists. Lily stepped back, her face draining of all color. The video changed. Footage played. Jason and Lily, in a dimly lit hotel room, tangled in bedsheets. Having sex. Whom Lily recorded it with herself. "I just hired someone to hack her files. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" My past voice laughed bitterly. "You never even waited for my body to turn cold, did you, Jason? You slept with her while I was still breathing." Jason gritted his teeth. The crowd roared in shock, whispers escalating into disgusted murmurs. Then, another scene. Lily, kneeling beside my son, Noah, whispering poison into his innocent little ears. Your mommy left because she never loved you, Noah, her voice cooed. I heard audible gasps from the audience. My past self let out a shaky breath. I was supposed to die. I had no reason to live. The screen flickered again. This time Ethan. Come with me, he had said. Live, Emma. Live and take back what's yours. The next clip showed me in a hospital bed once more, only this time stronger. Determined. I refused to die. The screen faded to black. Then the present me. Alive. Standing here, in front of them all. The lights brightened. I lifted my head. And the world finally saw the truth. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then, chaos. Reporters screamed questions. Guests turned to one another in shock. The Morettis were frozen, humiliated, ruined, powerless. I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my chin lifted high. And finally, I spoke. My name, I declared, my voice strong, unyielding, is Serafina Malcolm. Then, I turned, locking eyes with Jason. But once I tilted my head, voice dropping to a deadly whisper. I was your wife, Jason. Emma Moretti. Jason staggered back. You heard her, William Malcolm said, facing the press, the media, the elites, the people who had once ignored me, dismissed me. He lifted a hand. I, William Malcolm, declare to the world Emma Moretti is no more. From this day forward, my daughter is known as Serafina Malcolm, the true heiress of the Malcolm family. The crowd erupted. The moment my truth was revealed to the world, the Moretti family crumbled like a house of cards. Edward Moretti, the once feared mafia king, now stood a disgraced man, his legacy in ruins, his influence shattered beyond repair. And now he was running. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of Ethan's penthouse, sipping a glass of wine as I watched the city lights twinkle beneath me. The hunt had begun. Ethan sat across from me, his fingers drumming against the polished glass table, his phone pressed to his ear. Track them down. His voice was clipped, ruthless. I don't care how long it takes, shut down every escape route they try to take. The Morettis don't leave this country unless I allow it. A slow, satisfied smile curled on my lips. Edward Moretti had once believed himself untouchable. Now, he was just another rat scurrying for safety. Ethan ended the call, setting his phone down with a sharp click. They're desperate, he murmured. Edward's trying to flee the country with Isabella and Lily. My men already shut down their access to private jets. The ports are being watched. They won't get far. I swirled the wine in my glass, amused. They thought they could erase me, I murmured, taking a slow sip. Now they're the ones being erased. Ethan's eyes flicked toward me, dark and unreadable. Are you satisfied? He asked. I met his gaze, holding it. I wasn't sure. Not yet. Because there was still one more loose end. Jason. Noah was mine again. I held his tiny hand in mine, feeling how small and fragile it was compared to my own. His grip tightened, as if he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. I kneeled before him, brushing his soft brown curls back as he looked at me with teary eyes. Mommy, his voice cracked, guilt and sadness swimming in his big, innocent eyes. I am so sorry. My heart ached at how broken he sounded. Tears slipped down his chubby cheeks as his lips trembled. Sorry I chose Aunt Lily, he hiccuped. Aunt Lily told me you didn't love me. That you hate me because I'm born. But he clutched my dress, his little fingers curling desperately. I missed you, Mommy. I missed you so much. My throat tightened as I pulled him into my arms, hugging him close. His little body trembled against mine, his arms wrapping tightly around my neck. I buried my face into his soft hair, inhaling the familiar scent of my baby boy. Shoo, I whispered, stroking his back. It's okay, my love. Mommy's here now. And I will never leave you again. Noah sobbed harder, gripping onto me like a lifeline. I felt Ethan's presence behind me, silent, unwavering. I turned my head slightly, locking eyes with him. He didn't say anything, but the way his gaze softened at the sight of Noah clinging to me made my heart squeeze. Noah suddenly pulled back, looking up at me with wide eyes. Mommy, can I call Uncle Ethan uncle for real? He sniffled, rubbing his little nose. He saved you, right? He's like my hero too. Ethan stiffened beside me. I turned to look at him. His usually sharp, calculating expression had softened into something almost unreadable. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out at first. Then, slowly, he crouched down to Noah's level, resting a firm but gentle hand on his small shoulder. "You can call me whatever you want, kid. But if you ask me, I think Uncle Ethan has a nice ring to it." Noah's eyes brightened. "Really? Really?" Noah turned to me, a wide grin forming through his dried tears. "Mommy. I have an Uncle Ethan now." I chuckled softly, wiping his face. "Yes, baby. You do." For the first time in a long time, Noah looked truly happy. But then I noticed it. The faint purple bruises on his small arm. The way he flinched slightly when I touched his wrist. My stomach dropped. Chapter 26. I gently pushed up the sleeve of his tiny shirt. My blood ran cold. There were bruises. Small but visible. Finger marks. I inhaled sharply, my fingers trembling as I pushed his shirt higher. My heart stopped. More bruises. On his ribs. On his back. I felt my world tilt. My chest tightened painfully. "Noah," my voice came out barely above a whisper. What happened?" Noah blinked, looking down at his arms. "Oh," he hesitated. Then, his tiny voice answered, "Aunt Lily got mad at me. She said I was being bad, so she punished me." I stopped breathing. "Punished?" My voice was eerily calm. Too calm. Noah nodded innocently. "She locked me in my room when I cried for you seeing in the news. She wouldn't let me eat sometimes. She said I had to learn that bad kids don't deserve food." I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Noah continued, oblivious to the growing storm in my eyes. "One time, I spilled my juice on the carpet by accident. She got so mad, Mommy. She hit me with her shoe." Ethan suddenly stood up so fast that his chair scraped harshly against the marble floor. Noah flinched at the sound. Ethan's jaw was clenched so tightly, I could see the veins in his neck. His hands curled into tight fists at his sides, his entire body tense like a coiled spring ready to snap. "That bitch," he growled under his breath, his voice shaking with rage. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Lily. Lily hurt my son. Lily starved my son. Lily beat my son. A slow, deadly fury burned in my veins, hotter than fire, colder than ice. I kept Noah's cheeks. Did Daddy know?" Noah hesitated again. Then, he bit his lip and nodded. "He told her to stop," he said quietly. "But she screamed at him and told him I needed to learn my lesson. So he didn't stop her." Something inside me snapped. Jason let it happen. Jason let her do this to my baby. Ethan turned to me, his expression dark and murderous. "I will kill them both." I looked down at Noah, who was still looking at me with innocent eyes, unaware that I was barely keeping myself from marching out that door and burning everything to the ground. I forced a smile, brushing his hair back. "How about we go on a little date today, baby?" I whispered. "Just you, me, and Uncle Ethan?" Noah's face brightened instantly. "Really?" I nodded. "Really." Ethan inhaled deeply beside me, trying to calm his fury. He placed a hand on my back, his touch grounding me. "Let's take him somewhere nice," Ethan murmured, his voice still tight with anger. "Let him have a good day. And after that." His eyes met mine. A silent understanding passed between us. After that, Lily and Jason would pay. Laughter filled the arcade as Noah jumped up and down, his little hands clutching the joystick of a racing game. His face was glowing with pure excitement as he turned the wheel sharply, his feet barely reaching the pedals. "Mommy. Look. I'm winning." Noah squealed, his tiny fingers gripping the controls. I chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Of course, you are. You're the best racer here." Ethan smirked beside me, arms crossed. "Nah, kid, you got lucky. Let's see if you can beat me next round." Noah gasped dramatically. "Are you challenging me, Uncle Ethan?" Ethan crouched down to his level, smirking. "What do you think?" Noah puffed out his chest. "Then I accept." I watched them, warmth spreading through my chest. Seeing Noah smile like this genuinely happy felt like a dream. After everything he had been through, he deserved this. We deserved this. But the dream shattered too soon. Noah suddenly wiggled out of my grasp, bouncing on his feet. Mommy. I need to pee. Alright, baby. The restroom is just around the corner. Be quick, okay? I'll be super fast, he promised, dashing toward the restroom. Ethan and I stood near the entrance, waiting. Minutes passed. Then 10. Something was wrong. Ethan noticed my shift, his relaxed posture tensing. What is it? I frowned, glancing toward the restroom door. He's taking too long. He followed my gaze. Maybe he's just a gut-wrenching fear twisted in my chest. I knew. I felt it. Noah? I called out, stepping toward the door. No answer. I pushed inside. Noah? No answer. Ethan, standing beside me, checked his watch. His arms crossed, his jaw locked. He's taking too long. My chest tightened. I know. His eyes darkened. Stay here. I'll check inside. I barely nodded before he pushed the door open and stepped in. Then Ethan stormed out. Empty-handed. My stomach dropped. He's not in there, he said. His voice was sharp. No, I whispered, shaking my head. That's not, he wouldn't just leave. Ethan pulled out his phone. We're checking the security cameras. Minutes passed. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then a phone call. Ethan answered, his voice clipped. Talk. Boss, a deep voice spoke on the other end. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? The footage. Someone wiped it. My blood ran cold. What? Ethan's voice was sharp, deadly. Noah entered the restroom, the man continued. But he never came out. The footage cuts off right after he walks in. My heart stopped. I turned to Ethan, my voice breaking. Ethan then realization hit me like a gunshot. The cleaning man. I saw him right before Noah went inside. A man in a janitor's uniform, pushing a large cart full of trash bags, mops, and supplies. I hadn't thought twice about him. But now? Now, my stomach twisted violently. The realization burned through me like acid. I grabbed Ethan's arm, my nails digging into his skin. The janitor. The one who went in before Noah. Ethan's expression turned lethal. You think I didn't let him finish. I know. Ethan was already dialing. Find that janitor. Now. I felt my hands trembling. I turned toward the bathroom stall, my breathing shallow. Then, my phone vibrated. A blocked number. I answered without hesitation. A video began to play. And my world shattered. Noah. Tied to a chair. Crying. His small arms were bound behind his back, thick ropes cutting into his skin. A gag covered his mouth, muffling his sobs. His little chest heaved. His eyes so scared. And behind him, a man stepped forward. A familiar voice. Edward Moretti. My blood boiled. Hello, my dear Serafina, he purred. Or should I say? Emma? Rage blazed through me. You bastard tisk. Edward chuckled darkly. Careful now. You wouldn't want little Noah to suffer, would you? Noah whimpered in the background. Mommy please I clenched my fist, my nails digging into my palm. What do you want? I bit out. Edward's voice turned cold. You. Alone. No guards. No Ethan. No tricks. I didn't hesitate. I'm coming. Good girl. His voice dripped with amusement. 1 hour, Serafina. Come alone or the boy dies. The call ended. My hand shook. But my rage? It burned hotter than ever. Ethan's voice sliced through my fury. We're tracking the call. I turned to him, my heart pounding. I have to go. His eyes flashed. Deadly. Dangerous. No. Ethan no. His voice was a growl. You are not walking into a fucking trap. My nostrils flared. And if I don't, they'll kill my son. His jaw clenched. Hard. Then we go together. They want me alone. They want you dead, Serafina. His voice cracked, his control shattering. I stepped closer, placing my hands on his chest. I have to do this. His breathing was ragged. Sarah. Ethan, I whispered. Trust me. His grip on me tightened. His forehead pressed against mine. I hate this, he murmured. I smiled slightly. I know. His jaw ticked. Frustration. Worry. Love. Reluctantly, he let me go. But not before I armed myself. A knife. A gun. And something even more dangerous. A mother's fury. Tonight I was bringing Noah home. Chapter 27. The warehouse loomed before me, its rusted steel doors creaking in the wind. The air smelled of dust, decay, and something darker, something that coiled in my stomach like a warning. The flickering lights above the entrance buzzed faintly, casting eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. I clutched my gun tightly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn back, to not walk straight into the lion's den. But that wasn't an option. Not when my son was inside. I forced myself forward, my boots scraping against the ground. My pulse was deafening in my ears. With every step, I felt the weight of my past, the scars of my betrayal, the fire of my rage burning hotter. The moment I pushed the doors open, I saw them. Edward Moretti. The devil himself. Isabella. The snake who pretended to be a mother. And Lily. The woman who stole everything from me. And in the middle of it all, Noah. Bound. Gagged. Eyes wide with terror. His little frame trembled as he struggled against the ropes tying him to the chair. His cheeks were stained with tears, his muffled cries breaking something deep inside me. Rage. Sorrow. Hate. It all exploded inside me like wildfire. Edward grinned, stepping forward, his hands in his pockets like this was some kind of business meeting. Serafina. He drawled out my name like it amused him. Or should I say, Emma? How funny. I had you in my grasp for years, and I never even knew what a little viper you were growing into. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on my son. My baby. Noah, I whispered. His eyes flicked to mine, pleading, desperate. Edward clapped his hands mockingly. No motherly reunions yet. We're still negotiating. My grip on the gun tightened. Let him go. Edward sighed dramatically. You know, you never really had the chance to be a real mother, did you? He shook his head in mock pity. I mean, let's be honest. Noah belongs to Lily. The rage inside me boiled over. He is my son. I hissed. A cruel laugh echoed. Lily. She sauntered closer, her expression twisted in pure hatred. Jealousy. Resentment. Oh, please, she sneered. You were never his mother. You were just a pathetic excuse of a wife who couldn't even keep her husband's interest. I forced myself to stay calm. Let him go. Lily smirked. Then, she pulled out a gun. And pressed it to Noah's temple. My world stopped. Noah whimpered. Lily, I warned, my voice dangerously low. She tilted her head, her smile widening. You want him? She whispered. Then surrender. Drop the gun. Get on your knees. Beg me. I froze. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't let her take my baby away. I slowly loosened my grip, my fingers trembling as I prepared to lower my gun. Then, a gunshot rang out. Lily screamed. The gun flew out of her hand. I whipped around just as Jason stepped out of the shadows, his gun still smoking. Touch that kid again, and I'll put a bullet between your eyes, he said, his voice like razor blades. Lily clutched her bleeding hand, howling in pain. Jason? Edward's eyes darkened. You little traitor. Jason's grip on his gun didn't waver. You think I'd let you bastards hurt my son? His gaze flickered toward me for a split second. Or her? Before anyone could reach, chaos erupted. Edward's men swarmed the warehouse, guns drawn. Jason fired first, taking down 2 men before diving behind a crate. I ducked just as bullets flew past my head. I scrambled for cover, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then, a second wave of gunfire. Ethan. He burst through the doors with his men, his presence commanding, terrifying. His gun was already raised, precision in every shot. The moment our eyes met, I saw it. The fury. The desperation. The promise. He would not let them take me. Or Noah. He moved like a storm, a dark force tearing through Edward's men, taking them down one by one. No hesitation. No mercy. Jason fought his way toward Noah, dodging bullets, taking hits but never stopping. I surged forward, firing at every Moretti bastard who dared stand between me and my child. Lily lunged at me, her wounded hand trembling as she reached for another weapon. But I was faster. I grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, and swung. The impact sent her crashing to the floor, a strangled scream escaping her lips. "You bitch," she shrieked, scrambling back. I leveled my gun at her head. "I should kill you," I said softly. Lily froze. For the first time, fear flashed in her eyes. "Serafina." Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Noah. Get to Noah." I didn't hesitate. I ran. Bullets rained around me, but I didn't stop. I reached my son, ripping the gag from his mouth, untangling the ropes as quickly as I could. "Mommy," Noah sobbed, his little arms wrapping around me. I was so scared. "I know, baby." I kissed his hair. "I'm here now. I won't let them hurt you." Chapter 28. Noah's tiny body trembled against mine, his little fingers clutching the fabric of my torn dress as if letting go meant losing me forever. My heart clenched painfully, but I had no time to fall apart, no time to cry. Not yet. Gunfire roared through the warehouse, deafening, merciless. The acrid scent of blood and gunpowder filled the air, mixing with the suffocating smoke from the fires raging in the corners of the building. The Moretti Empire was burning, crumbling into nothing but ashes and bodies. Jason, despite his gunshot wound, was still fighting. Blood soaked his pant leg, but his eyes were wild, filled with a deadly determination as he fired at the Moretti men. He moved with ruthless efficiency, taking down anyone who stood in his way, each shot hitting its mark with brutal precision. "We need to move." Ethan's voice cut through the chaos, commanding, urgent. His men were overpowering the Moretti soldiers, bodies dropping left and right, but the fight wasn't over yet. Edward was still standing. A sharp pain ripped through my shoulder. The impact sent me stumbling, my vision momentarily going white from the shock. I had been shot. A burning sensation spread down my arm, but I forced myself to stay upright. I wouldn't fall. Not now. Noah screamed, his little hands reaching for me. "Mommy." I gritted my teeth. "I'm okay, baby," I whispered, pressing a quick kiss to his hair despite the searing pain. "I won't let them take you. I swear." From across the room, Edward Moretti watched it all unfold. His empire was falling apart. His men were dying. His power was slipping through his fingers like sand. And he was furious. A vein throbbed at his temple as he shouted, "Kill them all. I don't care who it is, kill them. Even Lily. Even Isabella. Wipe them out." Lily, who had been cowering behind a pile of crates, froze. Her father's words sank in. Edward had no loyalty, no love. He was willing to sacrifice his own daughter just to keep his empire afloat. Her breath hitched. "No, no, Daddy, you don't mean that," she whispered, shaking her head. Edward glared at her. "Shut up, you useless girl. You failed me, just like your whore mother. I should have gotten rid of you both years ago." Lily's face twisted in horror. "Daddy," she tried to run. But Jason caught her. Her eyes darted to him, desperate, pleading. "Jason," she gasped, grabbing at his bloodied arm. "Please, you have to save me. You still love me, don't you?" Jason's expression was stone cold. He stared down at her, his jaw clenching, his eyes dark with something unreadable. Then he leaned in, his voice deadly calm. "You chose this path." Lily's lips parted. A choked sob escaped her throat. And then he let her go. She stumbled back, shaking her head in disbelief. "No. Jason, please." A gunshot rang out. One of Edward's men fired at her, and Lily barely had time to scream before the bullet tore through her. She collapsed. her blood pooling beneath her, her trembling hands clutching at the wound in her stomach. I watched her fall. And I felt nothing. She had taken everything from me. My husband. My son. My life. And now? She had nothing. A piercing shriek suddenly filled the warehouse. Isabella. Her eyes were wild, manic as she clutched a dagger in her trembling hands. Her gaze snapped between me and Noah, her chest heaving, her entire body vibrating with madness. This is all your fault, she spat. You ruined everything. You took my place. You dash and then she lunged. Straight for me. Straight for Noah. I barely had time to react, my body moving on instinct, shoving Noah behind me. But before the blade could reach either of us, bang. Isabella staggered. A small gasp escaped her lips. Her eyes widened in shock, and her mouth parting she collapsed. A single bullet between her eyes. I turned my head, my heart pounding. Jason stood there, his gun still raised, his face unreadable. His voice was flat. Emotionless. She was always too noisy. And then he fell. His injuries finally caught up to him, and his body hit the ground. Jason. I gasped. Ethan caught my arm, pulling me back. Leave him. He'll live, he muttered. We need to end this. I turned my gaze toward the last standing enemy. Edward Moretti. The man who had tormented me. Stolen my life. Hurt my son. He stood there, still defiant. And Ethan stepped forward. They faced each other. A final showdown. Edward smirked. You really think you've won, Sullivan? He sneered. She will never be yours. She belongs to Jason. No matter what you do, dash bang. Ethan shot him between the eyes. No hesitation. No mercy. Edward Moretti was dead. And just like that, the Moretti Empire was gone. The remaining men dropped their weapons. Some surrendered. Others tried to run, only to be cut down by Ethan's forces. It was over. A deep exhale left my lips, my knees nearly buckling. Mommy? A tiny voice. A broken whisper. I turned. Noah stood there, his big brown eyes filled with tears, his lower lip trembling. And then, in the softest, most fragile voice, he said, Mommy. My breath hitched. I dropped my gun. I fell to my knees and pulled him into my arms. He sobbed against my chest, clinging to me, his little hands fisting my dress. I missed you, Mommy, he cried. I thought you didn't want me anymore. I squeezed my eyes shut, my own tears falling onto his hair. No, baby, I whispered. I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. His arms tightened around me. I love you, Mommy. I held him closer, never letting go. Then, strong arms wrapped around us. Ethan. He lifted me, carrying both me and my son. His lips brushed against my hair, his voice low, rough. You're finally free. And as we stepped out of the burning warehouse, with Jason unconscious but alive behind us, with the Morettis wiped from existence, I knew we had won. Chapter 29. The Moretti family was no more. Their empire, once feared, once untouchable, had been obliterated. Their men were either dead, captured, or had fled like cowards, their assets seized, their reputation shattered beyond repair. There was no coming back from this. Edward Moretti had ruled with fear, but in the end, fear hadn't saved him. It hadn't saved any of them. I exhaled, watching the last embers of the warehouse fire die out in the distance. The war was over. And I had won. But victory didn't mean my heart wasn't still aching. Jason had survived. Barely. I had insisted Ethan's men give him medical attention, not because I still cared, not because he deserved it, but because I had already taken everything from him. His power. His pride. His empire. His son. Jason was left with nothing but the weight of his own choices. And I wanted him to live with that. 1 week later, Jason's hospital room. The air inside the hospital suite was stifling. Too white. Too pristine. Too empty. Jason sat in a chair near the open window, staring blankly at the city beyond the glass. His leg was heavily bandaged, his body weak, his face gaunt. But the worst injury? Was the hollowness in his eyes. I didn't pity him. I wouldn't. I stepped inside, my heels clicking against the tile floor, arms crossed over my chest. It's over, Jason. His jaw clenched, but he didn't look at me. For a long moment, there was only silence. I know. His voice was rough, as if he hadn't spoken in days. He exhaled slowly, fingers gripping the armrest of his chair. And yet, I'm still here. I tilted my head, watching him. Is that supposed to mean something? Jason let out a low, bitter chuckle. It means I lost. And you won. His dark eyes finally met mine. Empty. Defeated. So, this is what it feels like. I arched a brow. What? To be on the other side. His lips curled into a humorless smirk. To lose the person you love. I inhaled sharply, my hands clenching at my sides. Love? He had the audacity to talk about love now? No, I said, my voice dangerously soft. You didn't lose me, Jason. You threw me away. His throat bobbed, but he said nothing. You betrayed me, I continued, stepping closer, my voice unwavering. You didn't just cheat on me. You broke me. You took everything from me when I was at my weakest. And then you let that woman dash my breath hitched. You let Lily take my son's love from me. You let her hurt him. And you did nothing. Jason's face twisted in pain, but I didn't stop. I wanted him to feel this. I have nothing left to say to you, I whispered. I came here to tell you one thing, I'm leaving. I'm taking Noah, and you will never have a place in our lives again. Jason's hands fisted the sheets. Desperation flickered in his gaze. Emma, wait but I had already turned away. And this time I didn't look back. Ethan's POV, she walked toward me without hesitation. No more lingering glances at the past. No more hesitation, no more pain dragging her back. She was done. And I had never seen her look more beautiful. Noah ran to me first, his small arms wrapping around my waist, burying his face against my stomach. Uncle Ethan. I crouched down, my hands resting on his small shoulders. What's wrong, buddy? Noah hesitated. His lips trembled. Then, in a quiet, shaky voice, he whispered, "Can I call you Daddy?" I felt my chest tighten. I wasn't a man easily shaken. I had seen war. I had killed without hesitation. I had built an empire on blood and power. But this? This undid me. Serafina inhaled sharply behind me, her hands flying to her mouth. I swallowed hard, resting a hand on Noah's head, my voice rough. Yeah, kid. You can. Noah's face lit up in a smile, his arms tightening around me. Okay. Daddy. Serafina let out a choked sob, pressing a hand to her lips, tears slipping down her cheeks. I stood, pulling her into my arms, holding her close as she trembled against me. It's over, I murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. You don't have to run anymore. She clutched at my jacket, her voice barely a whisper. I know. And this time, she truly meant it. Serafina's POV 1 month later. The city stretched beneath me, a vast, glittering sea of lights. I stood on the balcony of our new penthouse, the cool night air brushing against my skin, my silk robe fluttering gently in the breeze. Inside, Noah was curled up in bed, safe and warm, his soft breaths filling the room. And behind me, Ethan stepped out, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Thinking? I leaned into him, exhaling. Remembering. His grip on me tightened. You're free now, he murmured against my ear. No more pain. No more running. Just us. I turned in his arms, my fingers threading through his hair. Just us, I echoed. Ethan smirked. I like the sound of that. I smiled. For the first time in years I wasn't afraid. I wasn't powerless. I had won. And I was finally, truly free. Jason's POV, I stood outside the penthouse building, staring up at the glowing windows. She was in there. With him. With Noah. The family that should have been mine. I clenched my fists. My legs still ached from the injury. The bruises and wounds were healing, but the hole in my chest, the one she left behind, that would never heal. I had spent years believing I was untouchable. That I could do whatever I wanted. That Serafina would always be there. But I had been wrong. She wasn't mine anymore. She had never been mine. Ethan had won. And I was the villain of my own story. I turned away, stepping into the shadows. This was my punishment. And I would live with it. Forever. Chapter 31. Year later. The sun shone brilliantly overhead, casting a golden glow over the sprawling estate gardens. White rose petals drifted through the air, carried by the warm breeze, while the sound of soft laughter and cheerful music filled the space. Today wasn't just any day. Today, I was getting married. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my dressing room, my heart pounding as I took in my reflection. The wedding dress was everything I had never dared to dream of before, a masterpiece of delicate lace and flowing silk, hugging my figure perfectly. The bodice was adorned with intricate embroidery, and the long train cascaded like a river of moonlight behind me. I looked happy. Truly, genuinely happy. A soft knock on the door made me turn. "Come in," I called. The door opened, and my father stepped inside, his eyes immediately misting over as he took in my appearance. "Serafina." His voice was thick with emotion. "You look breathtaking." I smiled, my own eyes stinging. "Dad." He cleared his throat, stepping closer, his hands gentle as he took mine. "I always knew you were strong, but today, you are radiant." I swallowed hard. This moment, having my real father here, standing beside me, knowing he had been searching for me for so long, it was almost too much. "Thank you," I whispered. He squeezed my hands. "Are you ready?" I inhaled deeply. And when I exhaled, all the pain, all the past, all the doubts melted away. I've never been more ready. The garden was filled with laughter, love, and warmth. My mother stood beside my father, tears in her eyes as she beamed at me. My siblings, people I had only recently gotten to know, were all there, their faces glowing with happiness. And at the end of the aisle, Ethan stood waiting for me. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, his broad shoulders squared, his dark eyes filled with something deeper than love. Possession. Devotion. Forever. Noah, dressed in a little suit, stood proudly beside Ethan, grinning widely as he waved at me. I laughed through my tears. I walked forward, my father guiding me, each step feeling like I was finally walking toward my future. When I reached Ethan, he took my hands in his grip firm, grounding me. "You are so beautiful," he murmured, his voice rough, deep, filled with emotion. I smiled up at him. "And you look dangerously handsome." He smirked, but there was a hint of softness in his gaze. "Only for you, Mrs. Sullivan." My heart fluttered. And then, as the vows were spoken, as our promises were made, as the officiant declared us husband and wife, Ethan pulled me into a kiss that was nothing short of acclaim. Passionate. Fierce. Unyielding. I was his. And he was mine. Forever. The wedding reception, Noah danced happily with my father while my mother wiped away happy tears. Ethan's men, who had become my family too, raised their glasses in a toast. "To the fiercest woman we've ever met," one of them declared. "And the only one who can keep our boss in line." Laughter erupted around the tables as Ethan smirked, wrapping an arm around my waist. "Damn right," he murmured, his lips brushing against my ear. "You own me, Mrs. Sullivan." I shivered at his tone. "You're damn right I do." A few months after our wedding, Ethan launched something that made my heart swell with pride. The Serafina Foundation. A charity dedicated to helping cancer patients, especially children, receive the best medical care, treatments, and emotional support. Ethan didn't just throw money at the problem. He invested his soul into it. Free hospitals were built. Research was funded. Families who had nowhere to turn found hope again. And every time we visited one of the centers, every time I saw a child smile because they had a fighting chance, I knew I had married a good man. A man who truly cared. A man who would spend the rest of his life making up for the past by ensuring no one else had to suffer the way I had. "Do you regret it?" I asked him one night, as we stood on the rooftop of one of the newly built hospitals. He turned to me, his dark eyes unreadable. "Regret what?" "Choosing me." He let out a low, dangerous chuckle. "Serafina," he murmured, stepping closer, trapping me between his body and the railing. "I would burn the world down for you." I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. "I love you," I whispered. Ethan smirked. I know. And then he kissed me, the city lights twinkling below us, the future stretching endlessly ahead. Months passed. Seasons changed. And I never heard Jason's name again. He had vanished into the shadows, lost in the ruins of the empire he destroyed with his own hands. But I didn't care. I never looked back. I was happy. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was meant to be. 5 years later, Mommy, come on. Noah laughed, tugging at my hand as we ran along the beach. Ethan walked beside us, his hand resting protectively on my lower back, his dark eyes soft as he watched me chase after Noah. We had built a life. A beautiful, safe, happy life. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I stood at the edge of the water, feeling the waves lap at my feet, feeling the sun kiss my skin, and I closed my eyes. I had been through hell. I had lost everything. But in the end, I had won. I was free. I was loved. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was meant to be. The end.